and September 22nd, 2022. This is a special meeting of the Guam PUC Meeting. First order of business is all commissioners are present with the exception of Mr. Mangalini, who is recused from this meeting. Next is Guam Waterworks Authority, GWA docket 1908, petition for approval of GWA's petition for approval of the third 5-year financial plan. We have ALJ findings of fact and conclusions of law for phase 2 proceedings with proposed rate decision. Joe Pett, I'll allow you to start it off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as this commission is aware, these proceedings, also known as phase 2, concerns the last of the PUC's February 27, 2020 rate decision, whereby GWA and the PUC's consultants, Georgetown Consulting Group, agreed to certain pro forma rates for fiscal years 2022, 2023, and 2024, and that the final rates would be informed by certain analytical studies undertaken by GWA. These studies included demand forecasting, a comprehensive system-wide water loss reduction program, a cost of service rate design study, an affordability study, financing and alternatives to bond issuance, a review of capitalized labor expenses, and a study designed to connect more ratepayers to the wastewater system and cesspool septic tank elimination. The PUC, pursuant to that order, required GWA to file a fiscal year 2022 comprehensive review and update to its 5-year financial plan that compared its forecast to actual performance of its revenues and expenses, with these studies incorporated into the 5-year financial plan. On May 1st, 2021, GWA filed its updated financial plan, which reflected the proposed rate increases of 10% for fiscal year 2022 and 2023, and 7% in fiscal year 2024, without adjustment for potential receipt of Rescue Act funds. In that updated plan, it also indicated increases to its legislative surcharge of 3.7% in fiscal year 2022, 3.5% in fiscal year 2023, and 3.4% in fiscal year 2024. This update reflected roughly $25 million in capital improvement projects and requested a temporary reduction of its debt service coverage ratio to 1.3 times, and indicated a commercial paper program to help fund projects related to a consent decree, water loss reduction, and other necessary GWA projects, such as extending sewer lines and developing programs to encourage ratepayers to connect to the sewer system and not to cesspools and septic tanks. On October 22nd, 2021, the PUC's consultants, Georgetown Consulting Group, after several rounds of discovery and over the course of several months, submitted its review of GWA's updated rate plan. And in its review, Georgetown found that GWA should apply $5.6 million of $14.4 million in federal relief from American Rescue Act funds promised by the government of Guam to offset its fiscal year 2022 expenses. Georgetown also recommended against considering any impact of GWA's affordability program and advised deferral of this proposed program, which would reduce GWA's expenses by $5.25 million. Georgetown also maintained that expenses for fiscal year 2022 should be adjusted downward, and they indicated in the report about $2.5 million for Navy water expenses, $2.6 million for salaries and benefits, and $2.5 million for contractual expenses. Georgetown indicated in its report that with these adjustments, GWA should net over 18 million for fiscal year 2022 and therefore did not recommend any rate increase. Public hearings were held related to GWA's petition. 3 public hearings were held in an effort to keep ratepayers informed of any possible changes to their rates. And in keeping with the spirit of the Ratepayers Bill of Rights, the PUC held public hearings in the northern, southern, and central villages of Guam on November 3rd, 4th, and 5th, 2021. The PUC, however, did not receive any testimony from the public. During these proceedings, Georgetown and GWA were unable to reach any compromise regarding any of the outstanding issues, and so an evidentiary hearing was required as opposed to a stipulation. And on November 8th, 2021, virtual evidentiary hearings were held via Zoom video conferencing to take testimony related to GWA's filings. And present during these hearings were representatives and witnesses for GWA, Georgetown, as well as the Navy. The following day, on November 9th, 2021, GWA presented information indicating a modification to its initial request, specifically that since it would be receiving federal funding due to the American Rescue Plan Act, it modified its rate increases to 8%, 6.5%, and 6.5% for fiscal years 2022, 2023, and 2024. GWA was then asked to formally submit its revised rate application to include these revisions, as well as a fully executable rate application model by December 3rd, 2021. GWA's subsequent modified financial plan, according to GWA, incorporated reasonable and just adjustments to revenues and expenses and presents a path to compromise between GWA's initial May 1st, 2021 filing and the final testimony of Georgetown and the Navy. In this modified plan, GWA amended its application requesting instead 8.1% for fiscal year 2022, 6.5% for fiscal year 2023, and 6.5% for fiscal year 2024. In testimony submitted by Mr. Eric Watson, GWA's consultant, he indicated that if GWA is not provided the relief requested, the following would result. Bond rating agencies and investors will appropriately gauge GWA's creditworthiness based on whether GWA can articulate a cohesive, sensible long-term financing strategy. EPA's enforcement action that precipitated the consent decree negotiations was based on concerns regarding GWA's commitment to infrastructure reinvestment. And in response, Georgetown stated that based on its overall analysis, there is nothing filed in the modified plan that would compel Georgetown to change its position. Specifically, they stated that it has examined the data and determined that even if GWA's analysis was adopted, there'd be no change in their recommendation, and that a rate path with no rate increases would be sufficient to produce a debt service coverage of 1.3 times, and therefore no increase is required over the remainder of the rate path years. In these proceedings, GWA also requested implementation of new water and sewer rate design changes that include rendering more substantial and targeted assistance to economically disadvantaged customers while staunching the degree of subsidy provided to higher volume and generally higher income residential users. This new design protects residential users from assuming a larger share of the overall cost burden in the fiscal year 2022 through 2024 period, or to require stressed non-residential users to further subsidize residential use. Further in these proceedings, the Navy submitted written testimony contending that the Navy's wastewater rate should be set to a cost of service rate of $12.18 per kgal, because each customer class should, to the extent practicable, produce revenue equal to the cost of serving that particular class, no more, no less. However, during the second day of the evidentiary hearings, GWA submitted that its modified rate application accepts the Navy's recommendation to align wastewater rates with other Guam accounts, and that its modified financial plan reflects this Navy's request to align the rates to those of Guam and airport accounts. In its affordability rate design study, GWA has introduced a customer assistance program that would provide water and wastewater bill assistance for those household income qualified through other Guam social service program. According to GWA, this new program would modify or eliminate GWA's current lifeline water and wastewater rates and would provide limited supplemental bill assistance for special circumstances, as well as provision of water audits and plumbing repairs for qualifying low-income customers with unusually high water usage patterns. According to the testimony, GWA estimated that the program would cost $5 million with modest annual adjustments upward for program growth, and that this cost will fund direct assistance through the reduction of customers' water and wastewater bills, leak detection, water audit, and program administration. However, in its review, Georgetown recommended that the PUC deny implementation of the proposed program, submitting that the program was not completely designed and that the price was unreasonable, and that legislative approval may be required and that public hearings may be required to be held. Regarding debt service coverage, GWA proposed a temporary relaxation of the PUC and the CCU's policies related to targeted debt service coverage as a response to the financial impacts of the pandemic. Specifically, GWA contended that decreasing the target ratio of 1.4 times to 1.3 times would help ensure GWA does not fall into technical default, while significantly moderating pressure on rate revenue requirements. Georgetown indicated that it indeed recognized the benefit of relaxing the current debt service coverage ratio proposed by GWA, and they also indicated that with no change in the rates, GWA is projected to achieve a debt service coverage ratio of 1.3 times for fiscal year 2022 through 2024. In these proceedings, there was also much controversy related to GWA's rate application model, or RAM. Georgetown has argued throughout these proceedings that GWA's password protection of the RAM limited the consultant's use of it. They maintain that in other jurisdictions, such financial models are provided with unrestricted access, and it indicated that it was dissatisfied with GWA's presentation of this RAM. They therefore requested that GWA remove all proprietary interests in the RAM other than to GWA, and that the commission confirmed that the RAM is the property of GWA on behalf of its customers. Now, based on a review of what is apparently a huge record, the numbers varied between the parties concerning expenses for the purchases of Navy water, contracts, and salaries and benefits. However, Georgetown has indicated that deferral of the affordability program would save GWA $5.25 million, and that reducing the debt service coverage ratio to 1.3 times will result in even more savings. However, we are mindful too that GWA's revenues have dipped during this COVID-19 pandemic period, even though GWA has implemented certain cost containment measures. In addition, while not fully developed in these proceedings, GWA will be expected to comply with US EPA consent decree requirements in the near future, and which may require significant funding for its capital improvement projects. And so based on these reasons, Mr. Chairman, I recommended a 4% increase for the remainder of fiscal year 2022 and a 3.25 increase for fiscal year 2023, as well as a 6.5 rate increase for fiscal year 2024. Regarding the legislative surcharge, I recommended implementing the rates that were proposed by GWA. And regarding the Navy's wastewater rate, GWA has already agreed to align the Navy's volumetric wastewater rates to those of the Guam and airport accounts. Now, with respect to the redesign of GWA's rate structure, I recommended certainly reviewing the new rate structure at a later time. Similarly, with respect to GWA's proposed affordability program, I recommended that this program should be examined and considered in a separate proceeding. And with respect to the issue concerning GWA's debt service coverage, GWA should be allowed to temporarily reduce its debt service coverage ratio of no less than 1.3 times for the remainder of this rate plan. And regarding the use of a RAM, GWA should provide a fully executable version of its RAM that allows users to easily input data into the model without unreasonable restrictions, or in the alternative, provide training for PUC and its consultants on how to properly and fully utilize the RAM's capabilities. Finally, Mr. Chair, there are other provisions in the proposed order which do not appear to be contested, and those include reporting on water loss and GWA's commercial paper program.
Thanks, Joseph. We're going to allow some time for our consultants to speak now. And after that, we're going to allow some time for GWA to speak. I think I'm going to increase the time, maybe up to 20 minutes at this point. So if you can keep your comments below 20 minutes, that would be appreciated. There'll be also opportunity for the commissioners to ask questions. They'll come back to you and ask for more information. Joey?
I just wanted to know if I could make a comment at the end of the proceeding.
Sure.
Or sometime, whenever you feel it's appropriate.
After our decision, you mean?
No. Whenever. Preferably before your decision.
Okay.
But I had a very short one-page thing.
Sure.
I would like to make a comment, that's all.
That'll be part of GWA's contribution. Yeah, we had to take away 1 minute of your time now to do that. Is Georgetown on the line? Jim, Larry, are you there?
Yes, this is Larry. Do you hear me?
Hi, Larry. Can you hear us?
I hear you fine. Do you hear me?
Okay, so we just need to hear him. One moment.
Thank you. Thank you.
There we go. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, then I'll proceed. Thank you, Chairman. I think our comments will be relatively brief this evening. I suspect we'll take less than 20 minutes. Let me start by saying, while a part of a 5-year plan, this proceeding specifically focused on FY22 year ending next week, and provided some guidance for FY23 and 24. The documents that you have been provided provide an excellent description of the procedural and factual nature of this rate case, and the various filings, hearings, and rulings along the way. It provides the commission with an extensive roadmap to this proceeding. That includes the documents that we provided, as well as the presentation that the ALJ just completed. The parties to this proceeding were far apart in their recommendations for rates for the next 2 fiscal years. Actually, far apart with respect to 22 and the next 2 fiscal years. GWA recommended rate increases this is in their revised case, 6.5 for FY23 and 6.5 for FY24. That was following an 8.1% increase recommended by GWA for FY22. Staff has recommended no increases for any of the years FY22 through FY24. Meanwhile, the ALJ proposed the commission approve a rate increase of 4% for FY22, 3.25 for FY23, and 6.5 for FY24. We note, however, that the ALJ's proposed increases were not supported by any party in the proceeding. By that, I'm talking about in GWA's case or in the staff's case with respect to the underlying support for such numbers, and that the ALJ has provided no schedule showing how these positions were arrived based upon the evidence in the proceeding. Staff's recommendation is that no increases are required for FY22 through 24. This position is supported in the proceeding by various adjustments made to GPA's filed position for revenues and expenses and achieving a coverage ratio of 1.3 times pursuant to the earlier stipulation in the proceeding. Specifically, staff's review and analysis of GWA's filing found that several expenses and accounting adjustments were appropriate. And these included, I'll start with the large one. These include the full utilization of the $14.4 million in ARP federal funds made available to GPA in FY20 through 24, and the later utilization of rate stabilization funds. Staff's rejection of the implementation of GWA's proposed funding of the affordability program, or CAP, using ratepayers' money and the subsidization of one group of ratepayers at the expense of another's. This is a savings of $5.2 million in FY23. Staff also made several reductions in expenses. A reduction in the expense of purchase of Navy water of $2.5 million in FY23. This staff adjustment brought this expense into line with GWA's disclosure in its most recent bond filing documents. A reduction in staffing expenses by $3.1 million in FY23. A reduction in contractual expenses of $3.3 million in FY23. And an accounting modification for the treatment of capitalized labor of $4.1 million in FY23. Based upon staff's analysis and adjustments and the application of the 1.3 coverage previously stipulated, staff found no need for any rate adjustments. From a procedural and policy perspective, however, staff has proposed a number of recommendations in these proceedings. The ALJ is largely in agreement with many of these. We recommend the commission approve each of these policy procedural recommendations. These recommendations are as follows. Regarding the legislative surcharge, implementing rates as proposed by GWA and recommended by the ALJ in the amount of 3.5% for FY23, 3.4% for FY24. Regarding Navy's wastewater rate, GWA has agreed to align the Navy's wastewater rate to those of Gulf Guam and airport accounts. The hearing examiner has agreed GWA should be authorized to modify Navy's volumetric wastewater rate from $12.8 to $12.65 per K-gallon. With respect to the redesign of GPA's rate structure and implementation of a redesign, the ALJ recommended reviewing the new rate structure at a later date. We agree that it should be rejected in this proceeding and agree with the hearing examiner's recommendation that it be considered at a later time. With respect to GWA's proposed affordability program or CAP, we recommend the commission reject GWA's proposal and instead work with the government to secure a source of funding for the program while also securing legislation appropriate to providing a lower rate to a specific group of low-income customers, as was done for GTA. With respect to water losses, the current loss levels continue to remain unacceptable. GWA has put forth a water loss reduction plan in this proceeding that we find reasonable. The ALJ and staff concur that GWA should be permitted to proceed with the projects and programs indicated in its water loss study. Staff recommends that GWA provide the PUC with quarterly reports as defined in our recommendations and as concurred with by the ALJ, and further that the PUC should weigh implementing future rate increases, including proposed future rate increases against reasonable progress in the implementation of these water loss reductions. Pursuant to the Commission's responsibilities under Guam legislation, the Commission should authorize the undertaking of a focused management audit examining GWA staffing levels and the deployment of best practices in certain areas of GWA operations, including back office support, customer service, delivery and collection, system operation and maintenance, and water production, wastewater treatment operations and maintenance. This effort is to be taken under the supervision of an ALJ with staff assistance, leading to an initial report to be produced by September 30th of 2023. This area, the staffing area plus the water loss area, actually represent to the Commission the greatest opportunities for this Commission to provide some assistance to customers looking forward. These two areas, as discussed in our report, are particularly both areas are out of balance with respect to what would be reasonably expected of a water system, and as was found in I don't know, 5 or 6 staffing studies. Every staffing study that's been done since this legislation was first passed. So we consider this a crucial area. Regarding GWA's commercial paper program, the ALJ recommended, and we concur, that GWA should provide the PUC with an update on the status of obtaining the necessary approvals that would allow GWA to employ commercial paper for future capital financing. GWA should provide water usage data to the PUC for all customer classes in a format and schedule acceptable to staff with the guidance of an ALJ. GWA shall provide the Commission semi-annual information with respect to the allocation of all grant monies received or scheduled to be received. GWA shall provide a report to the Commission detailing the status of EPA proceedings and investigations. GWA, under the guidance of an ALJ, should collaborate with staff and file for contract review protocol modification by April 1, 2023, as was agreed to in the FY 2020 proceeding. GWA shall confirm to the PUC that it has removed all proprietary interest in the RAM other than to GWA, and that the RAM is the property of GWA on behalf of its customers that have paid for the model. Further, GWA is to provide a fully executable version of the RAM and to provide a user manual and corresponding testimony regarding how the model illustrates certain data and calculations. In summary, with these procedural and policy recommendations, staff recommends no increase be authorized for FY 23 and FY 24. That concludes our recommendations.
Thank you, Larry. GWA.
Mr. Chair. I distributed to you a brief update, and I'd like to go through it. I'll try to be as brief as I can, but there are some important points that I'd like to make. Just to start off on page 2, the commissioners are all aware of the history of this 5-year rate plan. I won't go into details. There are a couple of points that we're making. 2020 PUC asked us to complete 7 analytical studies, and I recall being asked at that time whether or not we could handle all of them in a year. And we did a lot of good work, and we did finish all the analytical studies on time. And a month later, we then submitted our May 1st application, incorporating all the results of the analytical studies as we were required to do with the February 2 order. There's been a lot of good work and a lot of good recommendations in those studies, and we have moved forward where we can with those recommendations at this time. As an example, the water loss control plan, implementation of district metered areas that were recommended is currently ongoing. We're just about done with year 1, and we should get all of them done in 3 years. The septic tank and elimination program and the expansion of the sewer system is proceeding because we have identified some grant funding that we could use to start this program. And then we have also drafted legislation for the alternative capital financing that will save millions of dollars for ratepayers in financing costs. We know that because of the current financial and economic conditions, we can't do everything that has been recommended in those analytical studies, but I believe there are a couple other recommendations that should be undertaken, and I'll get to that in a bit. Moving on to page 3, just to give you an update, since this proceeding began in May, at least the comprehensive review and update started in May 1st. And we had the evidentiary hearings in November of 2021. We're now in September of 2022, and a lot has changed. We received no rate relief in 2022. We continue to implement cost containment measures and defer capital maintenance, which has impacts on system performance, reduces our critical inventory, and could potentially increase future maintenance costs. We have been actively using authorized rate stabilization fund reserves in order to make sure we meet our minimum 1.25 times debt service coverage ratio in the bond indenture. Since the original authorization of ARPA relief funding for rate mitigation by the governor, we have lost $2 million of that already because of how long it's taken to get to this point. And we've also lost $6 million in CIP funding out of ARPA because of the delay. Our consent decree negotiations remain stalled as this protracted rate approval process creates uncertainty in GWA's ability to commit to any negotiated settlement. I believe that the fiscal year 20 through 24 rate adjudication process has been a burdensome and costly departure from the previously used process of a 5-year rate path with efficient annual true-ups. Aside from the issue of rate relief, I think the last 2 points should concern the Commission. Without discussing the details of the negotiations, I can say that in the consent decree negotiations, we've made significant progress in advancing a reasonable time frame, might be protracted in the eyes of the EPA, but a reasonable time frame for us to complete the major improvement projects that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Without certainty from the PUC about a reasonable and timely process for future required rate plans, I believe a negotiated settlement will fail, and GWA will be subject to district court action over which we would have no control, and an accelerated compliance schedule which potentially hurt the ratepayers. I don't say that we should not be regulated. I agree that we should be regulated, but I just believe that the process needs to involve some reasonable time frames, and I'd like to work with the Commission to get to that point. Moving on to page 4. Because of the changes that have gone on, I'm going to present some updates to each of the scenarios that have been discussed here so far. The first is scenario 1, which Georgetown proposes no rate increases. The second scenario is the ALJ's recommendation. The third would be the new Georgetown proposal that came in this morning, and then finally our proposal. So these scenarios reflect just updated information to include the 11 months of 2022, which have already closed, and that being annualized out to give us a projection for where we'll finish in fiscal year 22, and then applying just basic rate increase math and to identify the impacts on the reserves to meet that service coverage ratio. So in summary, the no rate increase scenario that Georgetown is advocating exhausts all of GWA's reserves and ARPA rate relief funding and puts us in a position of being in technical default of our bond indenture in fiscal year 24. In order to avoid that, we would need a 22% increase at that time. The ALJ's recommendation also exhausts all reserves, but we'll be able to meet the debt service, minimum debt service coverage requirements, except in year 4, we might need a bump up to 8% instead of 6.5. For Georgetown's proposal submitted earlier this morning, it also exhausts all reserves by fiscal year 24 and puts us in technical default in fiscal year 24. In order to avoid that, we would need a 13.5% increase in fiscal year 24, not the 4.5 that's been recommended. And for our proposal, we would keep at the end of fiscal year 24 $2.3 million in reserves, which is not much, but it's better than nothing. And it would require a 6.5% increase in fiscal year 24, which the ALJ has recommended. And we would be able to meet our target of 1.3 times debt service coverage in all of the remaining years. If we, just as a point of reference, if we were to go out now, for example, for bonds, financial projections that would need to be prepared in order to support that would indicate that we would not be able to meet our debt service coverage targets. We would eliminate all our reserves. That kind of financial picture, I believe, would result in negative rating outlooks by rating agencies, increase the cost of borrowing for GWA in the future. Moving on, if you go to page 5, this is the projected revenues and expenses for the 0 rate increase scenario. And I just want to point out that the projected expenses that you're seeing here are based on our annualized 2022 actual expenses with minor adjustments for inflation and growth. But you'll note, however, on the line for debt service, midway through the table, there's a $6 million increase from $33 million a year in fiscal year 22 to $39 million in fiscal 23. And that will continue until we pay those bonds out. The use of external funds, both the ARPA monies that the governor has made available to us, and available reserves are shown in blue at the midway through the table. And you will also note the ending net cash flow for each year at the bottom of the table. And you can see we go negative in fiscal year 24. Moving on to page 6, you will see a summary of that with the key points highlighted. The rate increases proposed at the top of the table, which in this case would be 0. And then in the middle of the table, you can see the debt service from $33 million to $39 million in fiscal year 23 and continuing. And then also our forecasted debt service coverage with it, including the use of the available reserves and ARPA funds. You can see that we will exhaust almost all, we've already used $5.6 million of the rate stabilization funds, and just to keep the debt service coverage ratio in fiscal year 22, leaving $18.2 million if we get the governor's $12.2 million. So we will exhaust $18 million of that next year with the current projections, just based on our reduced revenues and increasing expenses. Debt service at $6 million. Our costs have increased, and our insurance has increased as major expenses. So that will leave us less than $1 million at the end of fiscal year 23, which will certainly run out in fiscal year 24, leaving us with the projected debt service coverage ratio of 0.82. well below the 1.25 minimum debt service coverage ratio, which was a technical default. In order to avert that, in fiscal year 24, we'd have to prior to that, we'd have to come back to you and ask for, we project 22%. So we do not agree with Georgetown's conclusions that we can survive with 0% increases in terms of all of our reserves. Moving on to the next page. Scenario 2 is the ALJ's recommendations. And this is the projections that would result. You can see that there would be some increase in the revenues because of the proposed rate increases. The projected expenses are exactly the same in all three scenarios, not made any adjustments. And those expenses, I'd like to point out, do not include any customer assistance program expenses for those assistance or leave repairs or anything like that. They do not reflect full FTE counts. They reflect what we think we can, a little above where we are currently, because we know that we have some recruiting issues, and that continues with the competition that we get from the private sector and the Navy. They do reflect actual Navy, fiscal year 22 Navy water purchases with relatively flat demand adjustments and projected price increases. And similarly, we use power purchases from fiscal year 22 with anticipated reactive adjustments in future years. So if you move to the next page, again, that's the summary sheet of scenario 2 and the relevant information is at the top. And you'll notice in fiscal year 23, although the ALJ recommended 4% in fiscal year 22 and 3.25% in fiscal year 23, we're already beyond fiscal year 22, but if it had been implemented, the 4 and 3.25 would compound into an equivalent effective rate of 7.38. So if we apply that for fiscal year 23, we do get an additional 6.6 million in incremental revenues, but we would still end up losing 12.2 million in reserves and ARPA funds to meet the debt service coverage target of 1.3. That leaves us with 6 million left at the end of fiscal year 23, which would put us at 1.26 in fiscal year 24, which is above the minimum debt service coverage, but doesn't meet the 1.3 target. So that's why I said we might have to come back and ask for 8% as opposed to a 6.5% increase in 2024, just to make coverage. But regardless, we will also exhaust the reserves by fiscal year 24 for this scenario. Moving on to the next slide, scenario 3, the projection page. You can see this is what Georgetown submitted around 7 o'clock this morning. We were trying to get the numbers crunched with the model, and this is what we come up with using the same expenses. We will not meet the minimum debt service coverage in fiscal year 24. If you look at the summary page on the next sheet, slide number 9, you can see that 4.5 and the 4.5 fiscal years 23 and 24. 14.5 million in reserves will be used next year, with the remaining 3.7 exhausted in fiscal year 24. And in fiscal year 24, with that 4.5% proposed rate increase, we project that we will be at 1.1 times the debt service coverage ratio, which is well below the 1.25, which would put us in technical default. So in order to avert that, we would need to come back to you and ask for an increase of 13.5% in the last fiscal year. And then if you can move to, just in the interest of brevity, move to right to page 11, the summary sheet for scenario 4. This is GWA's proposal, and really what we're asking here is not anything different than what we've asked for before. Essentially, we would like to implement the new rate design. I want to clarify the new rate design without any customer assistance program discounts. So the objectionable parts of the rate design and the affordability program are not included in this proposal. It's just the restructuring of the rates using a 3-tiered model on the water side reduced base rate on the wastewater side, but volumetric charges for residential customers. Now, this would result in an effective 8.1% increase in revenue, but the rates, because of the changes in the specific classes of the rate design, not everybody would see the 8.1% increase in rates. In fact, the way the rate design is structured, if you use less than 3,500 gallons a month on for our residential customers, if you use less than that, which is about 30 to 40% of our residential customer base, you actually see a decrease in your rates next year as opposed to what you're paying now. As you use more water above that amount and get to the higher tiers, then the rate increases, which is appropriate because the more you use, the higher burden you place on the system, the more it should cost. And so this is we believe, a fair structure and a very well thought out rate design, despite the comments that have been made by others. The other thing I would note is that Georgetown's main objection to the rate design, as I recall in the proceedings, was that you don't need rates, so why, you don't need rate increases, so why are you doing the rate design? That was one. I think they've shown, even with the ALJ's recommendation, that rate increases are required. So that argument for not having the rate design kind of goes out the window. Their next argument was they didn't want to confuse customers. And I just don't think that that's a valid reason not to consider or approve the rate design that you ordered us to look at as part of one of the other panel of studies. And this is what came out of it, and we think it's a good recommendation that I referred to earlier, and I think it should be implemented. And I'm asking that you consider that. In comparison, the increase in rate revenues, or revenues that would be that would result from the rate design adoption, is 8.1%, as compared to the 7.38% that the ALJ has recommended for the same period. So we're really not that far off. But what it does allow us to do, it aligns the rate design closer to cost of service, and it allows us to move in that direction, which is where we understood you wanted us to go in future years. It also creates a more fair structuring of the wastewater charges. And I've included in the back a schedule which shows the rate design, which I can explain a little later. So moving on to page 13, our proposal versus the ALJ's recommendations. I mentioned some of this already. We're not that far, but 8.1% increase versus the 7.38 compounded rate increase recommended by the ALJ. And again, about 30 to 40% of residential customers will see lower rates if we adopt the rate design than they are seeing today. Moving on to slide 14, the rate design contemplates common meter size scale base charges for water, which exist, reduction of the lifeline residential rate usage threshold from 5,000 gallons a month to 3,000 gallons a month, and then an inclining three-tier volumetric rates for residential accounts, and uniform volume rates for non-residential accounts. So 3 tiers. The more you use, the higher the tariff. On the wastewater side, again, we replicate the meter size scale base charges. So the bigger your meter, the bigger your base charge. Under this scenario, residential rates, which are now flat rate for all meter sizes at $28, I believe, that would be roughly cut to a third, about $9 for the base charge, and then volumetric rates, depending on how much you use. The rate design also aligns, as was mentioned earlier, the Navy's proposed, the Navy's rate with the other government and airport rates. On page 15 is proposed rate adjustments, and you can see here the tiers at less than 3,000 gallons, less than 10,000 gallons, but above 3,000 gallons, and then above 10,000 gallons. And you can see the different tariffs there. the base rate would stay the same for tier one at $3. Actually, it would go down a cent from 3.01 to $3 per kgal. And then the tier two rate between 3 kgals and 10 kgals a month, you would pay $7 per kgal. And then above 10 kgals, you're paying $14 per kgal. And then on the wastewater side, you can see the existing rate is $27.54, and under the new proposed rate design, that would be cut to $9 for the 3/4 inch meter, and it's scaled up appropriately in the same proportions as the water meter base charges. And then volumetric rates at $4.40 for residential customers per kgal. So the more wastewater you send us, the more. Again, this aligns more with cost of service, and I think puts us in a good position to continue in that direction for the community's directive as we move forward. So, in summary, our request would be that in lieu of adopting the ALJ's recommended rate relief, effective rate relief of 7.38%, that you adopt our rate design, which would give us an effective 8.1% increase in revenues for fiscal year 23, but also decrease rates for residential customers who use less than 3,500 gallons a month, which is about 30 to 40% of our customer base on any given month. We also ask that you would approve the 6.5% for fiscal year 24 with a single efficient true-up, no comprehensive review and update. We also would ask that you approve and adopt the capitalized labor protocols that we put forth in the analytical study and that were recommended in the analytical study. And for the purposes of advancing our consent decree negotiations and keeping me out of U.S. District Court, I would ask that you affirm a efficient model of rate relief adjudication. I understand that we need to be regulated, that we should be regulated, and there should be scrutiny. But again, I think it should be reasonable, and the process and the time frame need to be predictable so that we can have some confidence, and the financial community can have some confidence that we will be able to meet the obligations if we sign a consent decree and our bond obligations as we move forward. After, we also concur with a lot of what was said with the procedural issues that need to be addressed. We agree that the customer assistance program needs further vetting, and we're happy to wait on that and put it forward in the next 5-year rate plan. At that time, we would also incorporate an updated capital improvement plan that takes into account the ongoing update to our master plan, our 5-year update, which we're undertaking right now, any confirmed infrastructure and investment jobs Act grant funding that we would be able to receive. That way we could reduce finance requirements for capital improvements. And we would also include any results of either hopefully a negotiated consent decree, or if not, and unfortunately, an order from a federal lawsuit. The next 5-year rate plan would include all of that. We would continue to work to implement the tax exempt commercial paper. We've already drafted the legislation and had some initial meetings, and we would advance that. And we will work with the ALJ under separate documents, we believe, as needed to resolve the deferred policy and procedural matters such as the contract review protocol. And again, any further study on the customer assistance program and legislative enhancements that might be required for water affordability.
Thank you, Miguel. Joey?
Oh, I think I think on everything. I think I won. Okay. My purpose in doing this is to kind of give the historical context to where we've been. And from the point of view of the CCU, the Guam Water Works Authority is at a critical point in meeting the needs of its ratepayers to have safe drinking water and to properly treat their wastewater so as to have clean water in our oceans. In 2003, with the establishment of the CCU, the immediate need was to address the number and frequency of boil water notices, sewage system overflows, and the pollution that was flowing from GWA sewage treatment plants into the oceans around our island. In order to avoid GWA being placed in receivership, GWA entered into a stipulated order with US EPA on June 4, 2003, which was later amended on October 19, 2006, mandating the development of a master plan which was adopted by the CCU on March 13, 2007, outlining the projects required to address the large number of deficiencies within GWA. The projected cost of the projects identified in the master plan was estimated at $900 million. GWA struggled to comply with the stipulated order over a period of years, which led the US EPA to file an action against GWA in district court. The court ordered GWA under court order under CB02-0035 dated November 11, 2011 to reprioritize the projects and set new timelines for the completion of the projects. And GWA is working hard to complete the court order projects by June of 2023. One of the things I think is important to note is that we are working now on what we call a consent decree. If we don't succeed in a consent decree, nothing will stop the US EPA from doing what they did in the past in 2011 when they took us back to court. So that's their option. US EPA is now moving to continue enforcement action against GWA, requiring new projects to further comply with further requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Clean Water Act. This consent decree or court order, whichever comes first, will require GWA to generate additional revenue to fund these projects. And in addition, GWA will need increased revenue to properly maintain the assets and investments constructed under the stipulated order and the court order, and to correct system deficiencies caused by the improper and/or poor construction by its predecessor, PUAG, to replace and renew system assets that are beyond their useful life, and to maintain an adequate inventory of critical spare parts and supplies. Therefore, on behalf of the CCU, I ask you to approve the request of GWA to increase rates and to adopt the new rate design as proposed. This is important to me because I don't know, not many of you have been able to come up and see our new wastewater treatment upgrades in Northern, or I don't know how many of you were able to see the Agate Centerita brand new sewage treatment plant, or the upgrade to the Maddox recent sewage treatment plant. There are 5 sewage treatment plants that we have left on the island. Took out Plaza Gardens and made it, pumped it over to Agate Centerita. So we have now, there's one other sewage treatment plant behind the Iran Health Center, and that one doesn't have to be touched because it doesn't discharge into the ocean. So we have one left plant, big plant, one right out here, the Gannon Wastewater Treatment Plant, that has to be brought up to secondary treatment. It's not a question of arguing which process is better, advanced, chemically enhanced primary treatment or secondary treatment. It's basically the law. The law says everything moves to at least secondary treatment. This affected not just Guam, but Hawaii, California, Alaska, and all those territories, all those areas, some of whom said United States senators had to move to secondary treatment. We don't have a way around this. If we do get taken into court, it's US EPA, this is one of their slam dunks because they just simply point and say it's the law. And so I'm asking you to really give some thought to the fact that we're in a bind now, we need to move, and so this is very critical where we are right now for rates. And I thank you very much, and I think I went 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joey. Miguel, I like the idea of the rate design. I think the commissioners probably aren't prepared to rule on that this evening because it's a bit of information to digest. It looks promising. And I promise you that we'll look at it in the near-term future. And if we can turn that around later on, we will. So I think we'll take a look at that later on. I had asked, I was a little concerned too about the situation of GWA related to some of these numbers. The debt service coverage ratio is one of my concerns. So I asked our staff to take a look at that and get another proposed look at what the rates might be if we brought the DSCR up from 1.3 to 1.4. And so I think everybody, all the commissioners have a copy of that. That would indicate doing rate relief of 4.5% for fiscal year 2023 and 4.5% for 2024. And I think it's come along here, and I think we've just been apprised of that very recently. Is we dug into the rate stabilization funds, and the ARP funds promised it's shrunk now too. So originally, I think the starting point on this, when our staff was working on this, if I'm correct on this, is the rate stabilization fund was at 11.6,
11.4,
11.4, and now it's at 6.
6 million.
So you used about half the rate stabilization fund for this prior fiscal year.
Yeah, that's right.
And the ARP funds were promised originally at 14.4 million.
Correct.
And now that number has been reduced, as far as you know, to 12.4
12.4 as of now.
as of now. But it's not in your account at this point in time. That's just what's been promised. So originally, those two numbers, which we were relying on quite a bit for the next couple of fiscal years, were 26 million. And that's been brought down to about 18.5 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
We'll probably go through this, the ordering provisions in this point by point, but I'm just going to open this up to the commissioners to ask Georgetown or GWA or the ALJ any questions. And we're going to have an open dialogue about all this stuff. There's a lot of information. So commissioners, whoever would like to start, feel free. Pedro.
Let's compare with the anyway, the difference between Georgetown and GWA is 20.4, 2.5638 million dollars. Correct. I'm just looking at
Pedro, what are you looking at again?
page 9 and page 11. Fiscal year 2023 is okay. 2022 is okay. But when you get to 2024, you're kind of like in the red at $2.538 million. The projection here that I see from the FAR bill is just a growth. I think the FAR bill will be $3 million less in 2024. So, with all the solar coming in and all that, yeah, consumption is less. TPA is going to reduce the rate, I hope. But with that number, that's only discussion we can have to stabilize. Why don't we just kind of delay this and see in January what the number will look like?
I think we have to finish this business tonight. This has been going on a long time, Pedro. And I believe Miguel is, he's made some very good points regarding that. He needs to have some decision tonight so he can proceed and finish his negotiations with you as he That's a good point on the power. That's an estimate.
Just a quick question, you know, on this, when we, the original proposed, from the LJ was rated with Georgetown suggested, increases 4.5%. What was that 4.5% do to dollars to the average? Is it $3, $6?
If you were to follow, ALG's recommendation, and I didn't factor in PW's recommendation. I use $60 because my bill is around $57, $59, so I just rounded up to $60. So using the ALG's report, it would be $8.60 versus $65.
$3 difference. Right. So,
And that was the first thing I wanted to know.
right, I mean, at the end of the day, we got such a tough job to try to balance between, you know, the health of the utility, which is GWA in this case, making sure that we try to keep them out of trouble as much as possible, give them the tools and resources they need to negotiate their septic fee. And they're asking for 8.1%, so we're looking at maybe $6.
Oh, I mean, the ALG's report already raised up to 68.
Right, I'm talking about GW. I'm just looking at GWA's, overall, plan to keep their debt ratio, the DSR at 1.3. So they're asking for 0% in 2022. In 2023, they're asking for 8.1% increase. And in 2024, you're asking for a 6.5% increase.
That's correct. The 8.1 though isn't an across the board increase in rates.
Right.
So
That's what the rate design implementation, so that they're going to next question, which was in lieu of the cap, right, because it's just a program. The rate design is interesting. But I just want to get your thinking on it. Where is the, so on those tiers, right, you got 1, 2, 3, 3 gallon, 10 and above. So does that, do those tiers, those just across the board, so if I'm a customer that does 9,000 gallons, do I get my first 3,000 at that rate at $3, then my best at
yes,
some, and then so forth, so forth. Right. So also my bill tiers up. Okay.
the more you use,
The more I use track. So there's a savings for maybe 40% of that at the end of the day.
if they're under 3,500
They're
gallons,
under 10. It sounds like they're savings because they go from $10 to $7, $11 to $7.
yeah, they go from 11.83 per gallon to $7 per gallon between 3,000 and 10,000.
So when you mentioned 30% of the residents we see it cost savings across the board with this rate design, that was based on all 0 to 10,000 or 0 to 3?
Well, it's all residential customers. 30 to 40% on any given month use 3,500 gallons or less.
So then they're like, so I mean, it sounds like we've already gone to 2022. You guys are doing that, right? So you're asking for 8.1%, right, compared to the 4.5 or the 5.6 for 2023.
Well, our comparisons have been the 8.1 for the rate design, but the ALJ's recommendation.
If we move the rate design out, how does that impact that?
Well, move it out, meaning consider it later.
Right.
So we would hope then that you would approve the ALJ's recommendation, which would be 4% for 2022 to be at 0.25% for 2023, but compounded, they would be effectively, since we're done with 2022.
Right.
7.38% increase in 2023. Which did that, at least if you do consider the grid design at a later date, rather sooner, hopefully rather than later, then we're not so far apart. And it would be easy to adjust that.
And it doesn't seem like such a great ask. We're looking at $3 versus $5. Right. It's a full 7%. Even your 8.1 that you're asking for. You remove the rate design, remove the cap for later on, and then you'll still be able to survive with that 8.1 and then 6.5.
Correct.
Doris? Doris, can you use your mic?
Thank you. This scenario that, novel reports made does not include the promise we are so forth.
No, it doesn't.
It does include the 12.4.
Or
Where does it include?
the blue. The blue, Doris, is the rate stabilization fund money and the ARP money.
Oh, it doesn't.
Yep, they're using it all up
Okay.
in pretty much every model.
Which number are you using, 14 or 12?
We are using the combined, we start out with the combined 11.4 and 12.
That's
How
the
much
rate
have you actually
stabilization.
received?
The only thing we have right now is the rate stabilization fund, which is reserves that GWA previously held.
No. My question is, the governor has promised.
We haven't received
They don't
any
have
of
anything.
that. But
So my question is this. Is the governor's promise in any of these scenarios?
yes.
Yes,
All of them, yes.
So
well,
my question,
12.4 million.
huh?
12.4 million in ARP.
12.4 is included in
It's been
which year?
reduced.
In which year?
It's taken, the 12.4 will be taken in whatever year it's given to us. If she decides to give us all of it at once, it'll come in by the time this gets done. The condition on the funding is that the PUC act. Because the PUC has not acted, we haven't gotten it. If I understand what I've been told, once the PUC issues a decision to increase rates, mitigation funds will flow to us. And so then we would get the 12.4,
Which is
which used to be
14.4.
14.4. We would get that, and it is included in the beginning balance of emergency reserves. How it flows, it doesn't flow into it won't flow into a reserve account because the federal rules governing the use of the ARPA funds can't be placed into the reserve, but they will supplant revenues that we receive, and we take those revenues and we put them into the reserve. So the net effect is that we would have 23.8, or we had 23.8, 5.6 that we used for this fiscal year, reduced that to 18.2. So that 18.2 ending reserve balance that you see under fiscal year 22 includes the what's left of the 11.4 rate stabilization fund and the 12.4 that's promised like that. Same amounts, not same funds.
That was clear as mud. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit slow. I
Okay,
apologize.
Doris, we have,
Can you walk me through this again?
yeah, I'll do it for you.
Okay, thank you.
We have $6 million remaining in the rate stabilization fund, the reserve fund. All the rest of that money has already been spent. They have that money, but it's just $6 million now. They have no ARP funds yet, but they've been promised 12.4 as soon as we make a decision for rate review. So they have 6 plus 12.4, or Originally, those two fund balances totaled 26 million. When our staff in GWA was working all those models out, going back and forth, those are the numbers they were working with. So we've already spent 8.5 million in this last fiscal year. It's already gone.
When you, the current FY 22.
Right. Well, we've spent 6.5 million, and 2 million has been reduced of the ARP money.
Because it says 5.6 here in this forecast.
Right.
Sorry, 5.6 is correct, that's how much we've used. So the 11.4 minus the 5.6 is 5.8, so about 6 million.
About 6. I'm rounding off.
So the 5.8 plus the 12.4.
You have 5.6.
Yes, but out of 11.4, 5.8 remains.
Where did you get 11.4? I thought it was 12.4.
No,
No, that's different
different
fund.
fund.
They just combined them on the line. They're just interlinked.
Well, well, what, I was looking at their scenario, okay, where the amounts are different, 12.2 versus 10.4. Okay. That's what.
We have less revenue to work with.
Okay, all right. Oh. So, in effect, in the various scenarios we have included,
Yes.
is it 12 or 14?
Well, with the ARP.
12.4, because that's now the okay. And I guess the reason why the rates are needed is because the debt service jumps from 33 million to 39 million.
That's correct.
And that's because you front-ended and paid for the reserves out of the bond proceeds, and now it's been exhausted.
No,
What's the reason for the big jump?
so when
Because you have yet issued new debt.
we issued new debt in 2020,
Right.
we needed to do that in order to get the funds we needed to complete the full order projects that planned from our capital improvement program. So the debt service on that, there was capitalized interest built into it for the first 2 years, that expires, and then the first debt service payment kicks in fiscal year 23 at the additional 6 million, bringing our total debt service from 33 million to 39 million.
But if I'm not mistaken, that debt service also jumped because it's slower in the first couple of years and then it jumps, correct?
Yeah, the 33 million was for prior issuances, prior bonds. The 6 million is for the Series 2020 bonds.
Is there A and B?
No, just A.
Because one of them you used to just refinance it.
Right, and so it actually reduced our debt service.
I noticed in your audit, because you got the money in 2020, so that increased your construction fund by about $123 million. But in 2020, and in your 21 audit, construction fund barely moved, you only spent less than $1 million. So, and then based on your prospectus, okay, you were going to spend around $100 million in 2020 and $52 million in 21, but there was really very little movement in the construction fund in 2020 and in 21. What happened there?
It was a pandemic. There was a pandemic that affected, a lot of our processes.
I'm sorry? So you still have all that money. And I guess the next question I have, because according, jump. You were going to possibly go out for more debt in 23, next starting month. So given the slowness of which you are using your construction money or drawing it down, when do you anticipate to go back out to the market?
So we don't anticipate going back out to the market for bonds until after this rate period. So after fiscal year 23,
Not until fiscal year 24.
after fiscal year
So in fiscal year 25.
25.
Okay.
What has been included here though is the tax exempt commercial paper program being implemented in fiscal year 23. It requires some work. We need to get the legislation passed. We need several procurements to hire all the needed entities to manage the commercial paper program, and like 3 or 4 different specialists that are required, and we will do that with you. So all that work needs to be done in order to implement the commercial paper program.
So instead of going out for bonds, you plan to go out for a different source of financing in fiscal year.
So the projections include some of that financing being undertaken in 23 for the necessary agents, and then for the in fiscal year 24. So we would start to use it after we get the program set up at the end of 23 and in 24. With regard to how quickly we're spending the money that we did borrow, a large part of that is tank projects, and we have those coming out to bid next month.
That's the reservoirs, right?
Reservoirs.
That's the last main major part.
So there will be a big chunk of that money. We plan this year to spend out probably about 30 to 40% of those funds.
Also, you haven't yet gone out to bid.
No, it's coming. It's impending.
Pending what?
Impending. Next month the bids should be out.
Oh, you will issue the bid.
Yes, we've been working on the design. So the bond funds were necessary in order to even to do the design work, pay for the design work. So we got it in 2020, but it's taken us a year to get the designs, a couple of years to get the designs completed. And that was complicated by the pandemic. Our getting projects out to bid has been slow because of the pandemic. But we did spend a significant amount of money. So our target was about 60 million a year, and I think we kind of met that because we received a large DoD grant, and that is what we did. Was one of the larger projects that have been out the last 2 years that we've got constructed. So we've been meeting our spend rate targets, just not the bond funds we're spending there. While we do the design work in order to spend it.
We have been asked by our staff for them to have just a little rebuttal on some of the previous comments, I guess. So I'm going to allow them to speak for a little bit again. So Larry, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. First, let me say that the Zoom quality is really a function of mic placement. Where the mics are placed in front of people, you know, we can hear everything fine. During the GWA presentation, however, the mic placement was not where it needed to be, and a lot was garbled. And quite frankly, we couldn't hear a lot of what was being said, but we caught the gist of most of it. We would note that in their presentation, the third alternative referred to was not a staff alternative. That alternative was put together yesterday at the request of the chairman. We would note also that the staff provided its documents 2 days before the hearing. However, the staff still has not been emailed a copy of the information GWA presented this evening. This is highly irregular for a Zoom type meeting. Usually the parties are all provided the same information so everyone knows what is being discussed. It does sound like information provided this evening is a combination of information that was in the record in this proceeding, but it also sounds like a lot of new information not in the record was provided this evening. I would note that this is a quasi-judicial proceeding and subject to such protocols. We would also note that all the new information provided has not been subjected to any review, discovery, cross-examination, and any consideration of this new information would be highly irregular for a proceeding. This new information, not in the record, in our opinion, should not be allowed and certainly not considered in this proceeding. Thank you.
I think one of the things he might have been referring to might have been the rate design. Is that correct, Larry? We're not going to consider that this evening.
That has been in the record from the beginning.
Yeah, okay. So that's for a later date. I think we're all in agreement on that. Anybody else want to make any comments? Joe?
Okay. Just want
Go
to
ahead.
ask, your recommendation of the 7% of the exact amount?
7.25.
7.25, that's not including the rate design that they presented. According to GWA, it's still doable.
Still do all the
7.38, we'd like it for,
They're building it from one year to the next.
Why don't we start at 8.1?
for that.
Because it's, if it goes to 8.1, then you 6.5 the following year.
$68.60 for ALJ, GWA went up to $69 million, an increase of about 46 cents, 50 cents. That's the difference between the two.
Right,
But
and the only reason I bring it up is because I wanted to make sure that their service station stays at that 1.3. And if we do it tonight, then next year for 2024, we don't have to consider raising it by 13.5% for 2024, just to make sure that the debt ratio gets back to 1.3. So, since we did get to 2022, it makes sense to combine the two, go to 2023, give them the 7.25 or the 8.1 that they're asking for, the 6.5, and then we use that as a base rate so that we can start looking at all the other action items that we want to have. Everybody's okay with that. The difference in dollar value of the average, and because we're also removing the rate design, that would give them the cushion they need to move.
My question is that we make a motion that it be the 7 or the 8. When we address the rate design, we find that, it's in the interest of the ratepayers, sounds like. Where does that fall in with the increase that we approved? Does it adjust out, or we still stay within the parameters, right, of what you ran your scenario on?
if you approve the ALJ's recommendation, it stays within the scenario that I presented. If you approve the rate design, then it would give us 8.1%, and we would be good for 3 years and have 2.6 or 2.3, I can't remember the number, but about a little over 2 million left in reserves at the end of fiscal year 24. We meet our debt service coverage targets. I don't have a scenario where it's 8.1%, but no rate design. That would be that would put us in a better position, but I don't have a scenario that reflects that. The 8.1 is purely for the approval. That's the additional revenues that we would get. 8.1% of additional revenues from implementing a new rate design, which had different increases or decreases depending on the rate class that you're in and how much it is.
Okay, so 7% plus would agree to the rate design. Should we take a look at that and approve it later? But you didn't want the scenario if we didn't do the rate design at the rate. Now, you're saying that if we do a rate increase, that triggers the ARP measures, correct?
Yes, that's what I've been told. When the PUC takes action on the rate case and it results in rate increases, the mitigation funds will be released.
So are you given a reason why the decrease is happening is as a result of there hasn't been a rate increase been put into place, that there's a certain percentage that's being deducted from what we understand the government promised, and that, you know, now from 14.4 to 12, right? Or 11?
We always understood that there were competing interests for the ARPA funds. And we made a request, and at the time, she allocated that amount with the expectation that we gave her that the February 2020 order required that if we submit by May 1st, we would see PUC action by beginning of the fiscal year in 2022. We did keep her apprised and let her know that things have been slightly delayed, but we certainly did not expect that we could take this long, and neither did she. And my understanding is that there were competing priorities, and she had to make a decision, and she took some of it back.
So it seems that the further delay there is in the rate increase, then those funds could be designated to other areas,
Right.
depending on the project.
Earlier when we were talking about the 8.1 without the rate design, it's kind of an interesting point, because it's not factored in, but you know that that's on the plus side for you guys. Is that why you just made a comment earlier that instead of 7.25, 7.38% is doable without the rate design?
No, the 7.38 is you take the 4
And 3.5?
and you compound the 4 so the 4 becomes part of the base.
How is it gonna have 7 days or in this fiscal year, they just said, you know, first
I'm asking you now. Thank you, Doris. You're the accountant. You get it. So it's compounding with 4% to get up to 7.3. That has nothing to do with the rate design or whatever it is. So at 7.38 and at 6 in 2023 and at 6.5% at 2024, you will meet your goals.
We will meet the debt service coverage ratio. We will deplete the reserves, but we won't hit the goal of 1.3 projected. We'll be above 1.25, but we won't hit 1.3 in 2024.
That was your scenario. So 7.38, you're 0% at 2022.
You're looking at page 9?
And look at page 12.
Okay, page 13 is
Page 12. 12? No, 7.38.
sorry, our numbers are, yes, okay,
It's your scenario 4B.
yes, okay,
Okay, use proposed rate design.
right,
So, that was a 0% rate increase in an 8.1. That's why we're getting an 8.1.
yes.
If we were to approve that, then that and plus the 6.5, that will keep you above the 1.3 year DSR. It'll keep your water on your. Is that going to deplete all your
No,
reserves?
that leaves us 2.3 million.
That will build back your reserves back up, or at least keep from where it was, and stop it from bleeding.
Right.
We give your reserves a stay.
The last number on the last row, ending reserve balance.
Right. And so it's gonna go from 18 million down to 2.2.
Right.
And so then, Doris did the calculation earlier, it was about 65 cents, the difference between 7.3 and 8.1. On the average, 50 some cents, so it's pretty reasonable to ask. At 8%. Right, in 2023, we go 8.1%
In 2 years.
Right. Next year. That's additional $5, right?
Miguel, I want to ask you,
$5 or $6.
Mr. Guerrero brought up earlier, I think, a very good point about the power purchases. And we have that increasing from an $18 million range up to 22 in a couple of years' time. Now, that's, of course, an estimate. What are you basing that upon?
So my understanding is that for fiscal year 23, we're using our consumption from annualized consumption for annualized power consumption for 2022. And we're applying the LEAG rates that we know are coming. You guys can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong.
Go ahead.
He's correct. Where we took our estimated consumption and what we believe are needs to happen with the power rates, even the upcoming and certainly if we do the true up and the power rates went another way, we would adjust.
So for 23, we're confident in the numbers. For 24, we're losing what we know. But if we do the true up, we come back. If the power rates go down for whatever reason, we come back, we adjust. But we don't need a comprehensive review and update to adjust.
Go ahead, Doris. Bring the mic closer to you.
How does your FY 20 and 21 final audit numbers compare to your projected numbers? Did you do a comparison on that to see how close you were either in revenues or in expenses? Because, like in forecast, there's always going to be areas that are going to be up or down. Very rarely do you never get spot on the money. So my question is, because again, this is a forecast, and there's going to be 23 might seem more reasonable than 24. So I guess my question is, how good have your forecasts been from forecast to actual? 5% off, 10% off, or did you look at that?
So what's been happening with our revenues because of the pandemic, they haven't been as healthy as we hope. So we're seeing, and so what we've been doing is we've been cost containing so that we can stay within our net service. So we continue to manage our expenditures to make sure that we stay healthy financially.
2020 to 21, that you've been managing, although I know that 3 million, your expenses went from 86 million to 92 million, of which 1.8 was due to depreciation, so taking out depreciation, your expenses were going up.
So, usually the OPEB, adjustment is also a large one.
Oh, yeah, okay. Is that a separate line? You can hold that expenses like a separate line? But OPEB is, that's not a cash amount. Yeah, that's not a cash, so it has no effect.
Right, but it's an expenditure on.
Is that calculated in the bond calculation?
No, it's taken out.
Okay, so again, there's no effect. So you can't use OPEB. That's the
Right,
basic.
but you're comparing expenditure year to year. What I'm saying is that one of the adjustments is linked.
That's to your payment.
It increases our expenditure.
Yeah. But OPEB is not a cash expenditure.
I agree.
Okay, so it's not affecting anything.
If you're looking at our expenditures from year to year, our expenditures would go up because of OPEB.
Sure, yes, I agree.
So you were asking about why are our expenditures so low? I misunderstand.
Let me rephrase my question. When you do your debt service calculation, is OPEB included or not included?
It's not.
It's not. So it has to, that's what I'm saying. So the effect is, so I guess it's too quick to find out what was the true cost containment, because right now, just on a gross point of view, the numbers are so high. Okay. And, going back to my concerns here, again, these are projections, and, I guess the revenue has been lower due to the condition of the economy. But the forecast you're putting in here of 69 is primarily due to the rate increases, not necessarily an increase in volume. Is the whole volume the same in the forecast, or is it primarily only, is the increase only due to the rate increase?
There's a minimal, increase in customers. We put in a small amount of, we're projecting a small amount of customer growth.
And I'm more concerned about the commercial, because the commercial was where you had this significant decline. And, I guess my question is, what percent did you, in your forecast, or did you include an increase in the commercial?
Our demand is flat. We worked in a small increase in our customers.
So,
Our number of customers.
so it, and again, the forecast, I don't have a crystal ball for this, but should tourism,
In the true up, if our
Revenues
revenues
go
do
up.
better than expected, we make those adjustments in FY.
I'm sorry, the rate, what would go down, the rate? Why would the rate increase go down?
Well, I mean, if they're true, if they have excess funds, then they won't need that much of a rate increase in the so the rate, the gas.
Yeah, but we've already,
No, it's just, this is just, 2023 is what we're doing now is the 2024 rate is not set, so it's like we're allowing them to base their.
no,
We're saying here, for 2024, but it could be adjusted based on true up. And one of the recommendations of the consultant was to do a true up for 2024.
so we're going to say not to do a true up. I thought you said
No, now was not to do a comprehensive study, or not to do a true up planning for 2023 because we're already in 2023. But there is a 2024. So if we're going just to move this proceeding further, can we, so let's just work on using the consultant's document as the order. And on the ordering provisions, that's just going down. I mean, if we can agree that, that those rates, increases that GWA has requested is reasonable, then on section number 2 of the ordering provisions, instead of 4.5, that goes to 8.1%, for example, and then for 2024, it goes to 6.5%. We get rid of this increase shall be dependent on GWA's water loss line. We don't want to stipulate that based on that rate we're working on their water loss.
We have our own modified ordering provisions, which is in line with what we're asking for. That might be a better place to start.
Okay. That's what I'm trying to do, is just do that. Right. No, I'm just saying, for example, if that was it, the point by point now is just, I wanted to go just a little forward at this point. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chair, maybe I'll have some.
Right. How different is this? We're gonna go through the consultants one, and then you guys tell us what you agree or.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, I just had a question. You're gonna go to the consultant or are you gonna go to the ALJ's recommendations?
Consultants right now, which they're very simple.
Okay, I don't know.
Joe, go ahead.
In regards to your revenue, you stated you're factoring new customers as well. I don't see it. I just times your 64 million, 0.68 times 0.081. It looks like it's all on your 8.1 increase and your 6.5. I don't see any. You're saying you're factoring additional revenues in addition to that 8.1% increase and 6.5. So your revenue year over year, 22, 23, and 24, you just look at the water systems revenue. You said you're factoring in your 8% increase plus a couple new customers. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe that's correct for. It might be 0.5% or 1%. 1%.
For new customers.
Not in revenue, just in the number of customers. So it's not going to show up as a significant number. The revenue numbers change year over year is primarily on the percentage.
And then reductions in water loss, are you factoring in additional revenue from that? Water loss improvement?
Water O&M savings, there is, that is factored in. Based on the district metered area implementation.
And then the system development charge, you're factoring in a reduction in revenue for 23 and 24. 22, you have it at 600 plus 1,000, 380, 380 in the following 2 years.
Yeah, I think we projected a decrease in the amount of SDCs we're going to collect for the next 2 years.
And why is that projected a decrease?
SDC is based on the pollutions we from customers that are new. One for water. So year, and this year, it is a number of customers.
The annualized numbers reflect new developments and SBCs that are collected for construction and cash. And I think for fiscal year 22, we probably saw more than we anticipated with the customer growth. And the SECs that are shown for 23 and 24 are just based on that nominal amount of new customers and not any new big developments.
I think we're gonna go through the ordering provisions, and we're gonna use the most recent one from our staff in that regard. It's very similar to our ALJ, it's just an updated one. So we're gonna go through it point by point before we attack the numbers later on. And we're gonna start with point 3. Does everybody have a copy of this?
For example, page 39, so basically 39 and 43.
Everybody ready? Point number 3. A true-up filing for fiscal year 2023 will not be required. Everybody's okay with that? Point number 4. No rate case filing for fiscal year 2024 will be required. However, a true-up projection for fiscal year 2024 shall be provided prior to June 1st, 2023. Doris. You want to answer that, Miguel?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
What is a true-up?
It allows us an opportunity to present updated projections based on the performance of what we've seen in 23. And we update our projections for fiscal year 24. So for example, if at that point, when we're ready to file the true-up, we know that the power rates have gone down. We take a look at our projected power rates that we previously submitted for fiscal year 24 and for power expenses, and if there's an adjustment that needs to be made, we put it into the proposed 24 budget. So it has, at the end, when you evaluate it, it has the potential, if things go south, to potentially increase our ask, or if things go well and we get more revenue and expenses go down, and it also provides a potential for us to say, which we've done before, we don't need the full 6.5%, we can get away with 5%.
Just to clarify in my mind, okay? So, whatever rate goes into effect October 1, 24, the true-up will be done for October 1, 24.
June 1st, 2023, next year.
Fiscal years 24's rates will go into effect October 1st, 2023.
Right.
October
Fiscal
1st.
fiscal year starts the year before, October 2020.
So
So the true-up will either be to confirm the rate or adjust.
It could be adjusted, up or down.
Why would we want to do that? Why wouldn't we want to just stick to it?
Conditions can change.
So let's say your prices double again, and it's more expensive. We need to keep the utilities. We gotta adjust their rate in order to their expenses go up. But if their income levels and they come up with some to go down.
So that we will see a comparison, just to understand, we will see a comparison of what is in this forecast here, updated on 1/23.
Right. Okay,
Correct.
we're good? Number 5. GWA is authorized surcharge, 3.5% fiscal year 2023 and 3.4% fiscal year 2024. We're all good with that. Legislative surcharge. It's an annual surcharge.
But what is the percentage now?
What, 3.7 was it this past year?
This year, this year is 3.6.
3.6.
Yes.
Okay.
It is compared to the entire.
Right.
Life insurance and this.
So it's a relatively small item on the bill. It's not on the overall. Pedro, any comments? Good? Okay. All right. 6. GWA is authorized to modify the Navy's volumetric wastewater rate from 1280 to 1265 per kilogallon. Any problems with that? I think all parties were good on that. Pedro. Pedro. Cost of service to be more fair to a ratepayer. Correct, Miguel? A little bit less. You gotta be patriotic now, Pedro, come on.
My only concern is for water, we pay 4 times more. For sewer, same. So there's we buy water at $6 million, we pay sewer $6 million. All I'm saying is, because of the financial state, if you think this is a customer, I think we need to look at this. Maybe it's very funded. It's not like the ratepayer who build. It's a federal government. So if the federal government has this extra money, I guess, because they charge us, they're costing the same way we do. So
Pedro, for our consultants and their consultant who are in the States, can you bring the mic closer to you?
no, it's just kind of concerned because Navy is the Department of Defense and so they funded to get their money down, with the utilities and all that. And they just charge their customers. Same way we do. The only problem is, the only advantage they got is their customers are federally funded. Our customers are not. So we can have a delta here that's like $6 million. So I don't see why we should give them a discount or a rate decrease. I think we're doing it the wrong way. That's what I'm saying. If you're doing a study at the airport or somewhere that they did it, basically, it should be cost of service. What it costs GWA to run the sewer system.
That's what this is. It is cost of service. That's why it's being adjusted.
That's a good point, though.
This was already agreed to by both our staff and GWA,
No, I understand that.
and it represents about a 1% change.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Okay.
But my concern is, if Navy can charge us water at 4 times the cost it costs us to produce the water. Yes, that's true. That's a fact.
That's true, the Navy charges 4 times cost of service for water.
Well, not 4 times cost of their service, maybe 4 times cost of our service to produce it, but they charge us more than it costs us to produce. The problem with purchasing Navy water and selling it to residential customers is what we charge residential customers is less than what we pay for the water. That's not true of all rate classes, it's just residential. And that's where that 3 or 4 times based on our cost of service study, yes.
They were a party.
I remember I read the Navy was there.
Another angle, Mr. Jerry, is the Navy also charges us for sewer. We give them on the station. Before, on to high school and all that area. But, we need to connect to their sewer. And their rate is not higher than one we provide.
Are we still using any military sewer system at this point?
To my knowledge, no, we are receiving wastewater and charging them.
Are we losing money on that charge as well?
No, I don't think so.
In the wastewater?
And in addition to paying the rates that they are paying, they also provided, DOD provided the 50 grand for us to upgrade the sewer line that conveys the waste. Right?
Yeah.
And the Northern District.
We've got a pretty good boost with the northern wastewater treatment plant and the main sewer line up there. And I want you all to, I've been up there several times. I want all of you to take a tour and see at least northern wastewater and probably Agate, Santa Rita, and the pneumatic plants too. They're well worth seeing. It's a remarkable project. But Pedro, you made some good points, but we've got to rule on this point. We've got a lot more to go on.
I just want to be heard.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Because
Thank you.
there's some imbalance going on.
Yeah.
And we need to fix it. And this is the body that can fix it.
So is there any move towards the future to stop buying water from Navy?
In some locations where we don't have an alternate source, unless we have to buy it, right? But the goal is to prioritize water losses in those areas in order to reduce the cost.
That was addressed in this docket too.
Yeah, we
Go ahead, Pedro.
make a comment on that, and we reduce the purchase of new water for Asan Santa Rita? Yes. The connection is from Umaga down to Agate. We could just provide 100 gallons a minute. This water is from Umaga, it's coming from Eden. That's our water. It doesn't cost us 4 times as much. All it costs is to write that line. And you will see the reduction in the water purchase, because now what we have, we built our system. So we can understand, this is just, this is not an idea, this is economics.
So I'm going to go back here now, point 6. CWA is authorized to modify the Navy's volumetric wastewater rate, not water rate, wastewater rate, from 1280 to 1265 per kilogallon.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
my suggestion is we change the language so that we tie the rate to the government and airport rate as opposed to executive.
Yeah, that's what this is doing, yeah.
Not existing right now.
But this is the government rate, correct, Miguel?
So she's just saying to add the language.
Add the language.
Add the language to adjust it based on government law rate.
Be equivalent to it, I think the intent would be that if it changes in the future, the government's rate changes in the future, the ordering provision doesn't keep the Navy's rate at the same.
Right. It goes up as well. So, to do with that, it's not if I go to
Joe, Pat,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
can we modify that part of the ordering provision to make it include the government rate?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So we would just,
maintain an equal to government rates.
yes, and I believe GWA's proposal is to add language, I guess strike the actual numbers and just add language.
No, I think you can keep the numbers.
Like
Keep the numbers. I just add language
That
that
it aligns
that
with-
the 65 is equivalent to the government rate.
That it aligns with the government.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair? GWA's, docket, or their rate decision, the draft language on number 8, page 2 of 5, Jeff? Is that what you're making in reference to, Tom? So that's something to take a look at.
Yeah, perfect. It's there and their language is already spelled out. GWA is authorized to modify the Navy's volumetric wastewater rate to align with the approved government account volumetric rate.
I would keep the numbers though. I wouldn't cross them out. Okay.
I can,
Just right
comma,
on to align.
which.
Yeah, right. Just put
which one.
comma after
Yeah.
the second kilogram.
And then to align with the approved government account volume.
Done. Are we in agreement? You're Pedro, you're with us on this, right? No. Yeah, of course you are. No? No? Rowena? Yes? Pete? Joe? George? You're not on. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4. We're good. So 6 is done. With the modification. Just adding that language of government accounts. Okay, now I'm going to allow our staff to comment on some of the ones that we've just gone over. Larry, take it away.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify item number 4, no rate case filing for FY '24 will be required. However, a true-up projection shall be provided prior to June 1. That's really just providing you data. You're not required to do anything with it. You may elect to do something with it, but it wasn't meant to create necessarily a procedure or a process or an adjustment would be made. It was simply meant to provide you data, is all that was meant for.
Sorry, sir. Can you start over? We just connected through your sound.
Okay, thank you. I'll start over. I was going to go back up to item number 4, where it says no rate case filing for FY '24 will be required. However, a true-up projection for FY '24 shall be provided prior to June 1, 23. That wasn't meant to create an actual true-up. All it was meant to do was provide a true-up projection. In other words, all it is doing is providing you more recent data. Whether you want to elect to do something or not is a whole different other subject. This is simply the provision of data. With respect to item number 6, as I understand, you were just clarifying that to bring it in line with Gov Guam and the airport rates, which is fine. Item number 7. Have you gotten to item number 7 yet?
We haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, I'll stop right there with my comments. If we could, I would say this: whenever anybody comments on something, I think we would like to have the opportunity to comment as we go forward. If there are no comments on things, you don't need to come to us. You can just skip us. Thank you.
No rate structure changes. Item number 7, no rate structure changes to GWA's existing water and wastewater rates are authorized in this proceeding. Miguel, any comments? This involves the rate design.
Obviously, our position would be that you adopt
I know. Later. Is everybody okay with this? Is everybody in agreement that the rate design proposal as outlined by Miguel this evening looks interesting? We'll address it later.
Can you put a date in? for the addressing you?
No,
Okay.
request denied. We'll work on it as soon as we can, Jimmy. Okay, 7's good. 8. The affordability program, CAP, as requested by GWA in this proceeding, is denied. GWA should work with the government to secure a source of funding for the program while also securing legislation appropriate to providing a lower rate to a specific group of low-income customers, as was done for GTA. Any comments? Miguel?
So, our legal counsel looked at it previously and determined that no legislation was required in order to implement the customer assistance program. So we would, and the other part about working with the government doesn't specify which government, and funds for low income water assistance, water utility assistance may come from the federal government. So we would propose some changes to this. To strike denied and put deferred, and then to strike work with the government and just say GWA should work to secure a source of local or federal grant funding for the program, while also securing any needed legislation, full stop, leave the rest.
Do you have that in writing here somewhere?
We submitted this proposed change to the AOJ.
Joe Fett, do you have it?
I see it.
Which point is
The amendment is to, number 8. And so basically GWA is proposing that the language reads, the affordability program as requested by GWA in this proceeding is deferred. GWA should work to secure a source of local or federal grant funding for the program while also securing any needed legislation.
read it one more time.
The affordability program as requested by GWA in this proceeding is deferred. GWA should work to secure a source of local or federal grant funding for the program while also securing any needed legislation.
Thank you, Joe. Larry, did you hear that?
Yes, I heard that. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Just a point of clarification, was GWA asking before all of these changes, was GWA asking?
For the affordability?
Yeah,
Yes,
for us?
they were.
Okay.
In the beginning. That was, in the original proposal, that represented about half of the increase they were asking for.
Okay. So I guess the question to GWA would be, is what would happen if you aren't able to secure local funding? Because local funding would require you going to the legislature of the government, correct? And then, is there anything in the federal?
There is a low-income household water assistance program, federally funded. The amount that came out isn't sufficient to fund what we wanted to do, but there is a larger movement across the nation with respect to water affordability, and so we believe that the federal government is looking at increasing or permanizing that funding source. So it's possible that it could come out in the future, and if it does, then we would propose using that funding source to fund the customer assistance.
But that's still down the line.
It is, which is why we said deferred and not denied.
Deferred is a nicer wording than denied, I guess. So your request is not denied, it's deferred.
So
I think what we're
What,
saying
what
is that
would this cost?
Oh, we'll address all that later, so let's not get into the weeds on this right now, we need to move on. Joey, go ahead if you want to make a brief comment. Okay, is Larry on? Larry, you want some comments on this?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sounds a little bit like a Verizon commercial. Can you hear me now? So on this item, as I understand what GWA is basically proposing is the word denied be changed to deferred. And they're also proposing some language about securing a source of funding from local federal government for the purposes of, I guess, coming back and reinstituting or approaching the commission again to reinstitute, or not reinstitute, but to institute this program. I think that's what I heard. And effectively, I don't know that that's much different than the language that's here. The fact that something's denied doesn't mean you can't come back and ask for it again. And so I'm not really sure what the real ramifications of using the word deferred are, because in essence, you would have to come back with some program at a later date again. So I don't know that there's any need to change the word denied at this point in time. And the words about seeking sources of local and federal funding, I don't know that that's a lot different than working with the government to secure sources of funding. I mean, those are just minor words there. I mean, we could probably live with those particular words about local and federal funding. So, I mean, I think that's my comments. The other thing I would comment while I've got the mic open a bit, it would be good if somebody could get on their computer right now and send us all this information, the information that was passed out when the hearing first got started, information that was subsequently passed out, and any comments that they have with respect to language they want to change in this order. It'd be helpful, because otherwise we're, quite frankly, as your staff, sitting out here rather blind. We don't have any of this stuff in front of us. Thank you.
Okay, so action on number 8. We're dealing with semantics now. Who all likes the word denied and who likes deferred? I like deferred because I can see the word denied hurts Joey and Miguel's feelings. I just don't want to do
So I
it.
don't think it's about hurting our feelings. I think that if you say denied, then staff comes back and says, you've already been denied. Why are you coming back with this? You say, if you're deferring it, just like you said, you're going to take up rate design at a later time, it has a different connotation. I know it's not about feelings, but it is about keeping the door open, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Good point, Miguel. So, deferred. Pedro, you're with us on this one, aren't you, buddy? All right. Doris?
Semantics.
Semantics. No? So we're all good with
Whatever
deferred.
makes everybody happy.
And then the second part of it, do you want to use the language as written or use GWA's language? GWA's. Joe says GWA's. Okay. Doris? Good. Pedro? We'll use GWA's language for the second one. You got that, Joe? It's a lot of record keeping now, isn't it? Number 9. GWA is to confirm to the PUC that it has removed all proprietary interest in the RAM other than the GWA, and that the RAM is the property of GWA on behalf of its customers that have paid for the model. Further, GWA is to provide a fully executable version of its RAM and to provide a user manual and corresponding testimony regarding how the model illustrates certain data and calculations. There is a typo here. Provide is listed twice here. So cross out a provide. to provide a fully executable version. Miguel, I know you want to speak a little bit on this. Go ahead.
I'll try to leave out all the words I really want to say, but GWA has no objection to providing full use of the model. Our contract with the people who developed it does allow for them to retain their intellectual property rights, and we don't see anything wrong with that. We provided Georgetown full access to the model, including the password, so they could see everything they wanted to see without when we were asked to do that. What I do have a problem with is making it an open source document that Georgetown could then use for the benefit of other jurisdictions, because it wasn't paid for by other jurisdictions, it was paid for by this jurisdiction. And that's where it should remain. And as long as they're willing to sign a use agreement that says that, I have no problems giving them full access. But I have a personal and ethical objection to it being allowed to be used by a consultant to use in other jurisdictions. And we offered for them to sign, they actually said they offered to sign that type of use agreement during the course of the proceedings, and then when we came time to do it, they never did it. So.
Larry, comment? We have Larry.
Okay, am I unmuted? Am I unmuted?
You're good.
Okay. I apologize for that. This is a relatively clumsy process. Apparently you have to control my ability to talk instead of me using the features of Zoom down at the bottom of my screen. So it takes a delay because you have to go through your host processor in order for me to be able to address you. So with respect to that item, we have no intention of using the RAM in any other jurisdiction. Certainly no problem stating that, and if we have to, we'll be happy to sign something on a piece of paper, but certainly nothing like that would be remotely something we would consider. I think it is important that the fully executable version be available. We have it. We have the passwords now, but also available to the public. I mean, the consumers of water and wastewater service have paid for this, and it could be that some of those may want to take an advocacy role in future GWA proceedings, and it's important that they understand how the model works and illustrates certain data and calculations. So that's the reason for this language, for what it's worth. But we certainly have no interest in using this model anywhere. And if I'm not mistaken, no, it doesn't. I was thinking, what we could add is that the PUC must approve use of the model. We could add that if that language helps. I don't have any other comments.
We develop this. We're happy to continue the discussion and debate and come to a conclusion on it, but I suggest that it should be pulled out of this. We have already talked about a separate docket to handle outstanding procedural and protocol items. This probably should go in there, and I think it's better just to take it out of this. Take it out of this.
Okay, we have some commissioners taking a bathroom break, but unfortunately for them, we have 4 here, and we all just said yes, so we're going to take it out at this point in time. We'll revisit this later.
This is totally.
Nine's gonna take off that. We'll revisit that. Been a point of contention for quite a while in this particular docket. Just waiting a moment for Doris. Okay. Doris, while you were gone, while you and Pete were gone, the four of us that were left here ruled on point number 9 to be taken out at this point in time. It's still kind of a very contentious item, and we'll revisit this later. Otherwise, we'll be here for another 4 days.
Thank you.
Number 10, GWA is to provide the PUC on or before January 1st, 2023 with quarterly reports on the implementation of its water loss study. Further, under the guidance and supervision of an ALJ, GWA shall confer with staff on the issue of reporting on the progress of its implementation of water loss reduction projects and provision of reports to the PUC in an acceptable format. GWA shall provide water usage data to the PUC for all customer classes in a format and schedule acceptable to staff under the guidance of an ALJ.
I think that if the quarterly reports on the implementation on our water loss control plan are to show you the progress that we're making with the implementation, that's fine. But if it's to see water loss calculations, typically the industry only does that once a year. After you have all the information, it's like if you do it every 3 months, you're not really going to see much change from month to month. Everybody compares it year to year. So I would say audit data should comply with the annual requirement, but if it's just a progress report on the district needed areas, I'm happy to do that quarterly. The other thing is that we would suggest that it read further, GWA shall report on the progress of its implementation on water loss reduction projects and provision of reports to the PUC in the format recommended by their water loss consultant, full stop. We've already had a technical memo. We had a bunch of discussion during the conduct of the proceedings that AWWA, who is the standard maker for the water audits, are changing their metrics for water loss control, and the consultant that we have used issued us a technical memorandum which recommended which metrics to use, which was what we previously agreed to, and we're happy to report in those recommended metrics. But to go through a convoluted process with staff under the supervision of an ALJ to do something that we've already consulted with the water loss consultant and is included as part of the record of the proceedings, that should be sufficient, and we don't mind doing it, reporting in the format that has been recommended and which the industry is moving. I don't see the logic in going over with staff who are not water loss control experts on what the format of the reporting should be.
Okay, thanks for those comments. Larry? Did you hear Miguel's comments?
Yes, I'm waiting to be unmuted. Have I been unmuted?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I heard the comments. I would just say that other than with the exception of the date, January 1, 2023, virtually this language is virtually the language that was in the proceeding and in the record, and pretty much mimics the ALJ's recommendation. So I'm not really sure why all of a sudden, after the record is closed, we're coming up with wanting to put forward a new approach. So I think that GWA has already agreed to this in the record. So I'm a little bit at a loss for why we want to, after the record is closed, come up and change things.
Joe Fett, any comments on that?
Mr. Chair, the language in the proposed ALJ, in the proposed order is slightly different than what's proposed by staff. In the proposed order that I submitted, Mr. Chair, I do indicate in item 1 of the things that the quarterly report should include is the quantity of non-revenue water and percentage of such non-revenue water during the quarter with a comparison of non-revenue water during the previous 12 months. So it's a little bit more detailed than what Georgetown has provided.
Joe Fett, go ahead and read your specific provision.
So my provision reads, GWA shall proceed with the projects and programs identified in its water loss study, including implementation of the prescribed DMA program. GWA shall provide the PUC with quarterly reports which indicate 1, the quantity of non-revenue water and percentage of such non-revenue water during the quarter, with a comparison of non-revenue water during the previous 12 months. 2, water loss programs that are underway and their status. 3, upcoming water loss programs that are scheduled. 4, any problems, delays, or other issues affecting the programs and proposed solutions for corrections. And that the first of such reports shall be submitted on September 30th.
Did either staff or GWA have any comments on your proposed order regarding that, Joe Fett?
Yes, so with regard to what I had proposed, GWA's response was that GWA shall provide the PUC with semi-annual reports instead of quarterly, using metrics prescribed by the AWWA Water Loss Control Committee, specifically which indicate 1, real loss reduction with a comparison of real loss reduction during the previous 12 months. 2, real loss as a percentage of water supplied with a comparison of real loss as a percentage of water supplied during the previous 12 months. 3, demand metering areas that are underway and their status. 4 upcoming demand metering areas that are scheduled. 5, any problems, delays, or other issues affecting the programs, and propose solutions for corrections, the first of which shall be submitted on September 23.
Yeah. Go ahead, Doris.
I like the idea of going semi-annually. I'm not sure I want to read it every quarter, a report. But I would prefer to get the first report as of 22, not 23. Is it 22 or 23?
And the proposed order is for 2022, but GWA is requesting that the first of such report be submitted in 2023.
January 1, they're saying January 1, 2023, you're saying September 2023?
This continues to be such a problem. I really would like to get a further update, and I think September 30th, 22. Well, I understand the issue. So for the period ended September 30th, 22, which is next week, and however long it takes them to do it, if it takes them 3 months to do it, that's fine.
How long would it take to prepare a report to give us eyes on this in a sooner fashion, Miguel?
If you want it to be as of September 30th, I would ask for 60 days to prepare the report.
Okay.
Yeah, but I would like it as of September 30th, 22, because this has been a problem for 40 years, and we really need to get an update. But I don't mind getting future updates semi-annually as opposed to quarterly, because I don't want to deal with quarterly, it's too
Well,
much.
yeah, just to comment on the reporting, whether it's semi-annual or even annually, it's fine. Quarterly definitely.
Yeah, quarterly,
It's
too
not,
much.
I think the quarterly updates, like when you come to a meeting and you give us an update on it to be asked, that's fine. You don't have to put it in a presentation for that kind of thing. Just so that we know where we stand with the progress. But when it comes to like how the report is going to be detailed and what data based on who gets to say it's acceptable or not, I agree with you. You guys, if you just use the AWA's metrics and a standard report, that's fine.
Yeah, but this really needs, because even in your bond perspective, you talk ad nauseum on it, so we really do want to get more frequent, but not as frequent updates.
I can do that.
So, Joe Fett, are you okay with GWA's language on this point?
But with 22, not 22.
Right.
So, from what I hear, we can go ahead and adopt GWA's proposed language with the exception of the first reporting to be due within 60 days, I guess, of when this commission adopts it. Is that fair?
The first report to
Within
be asked for
60.
the first report to be asked for the fiscal year end, which is September 30, 22.
As of fiscal year end, delivered within 60 days.
Yes.
Of
November
fiscal
30th.
year end.
Yep. Okay.
Got it? Good.
Go ahead, Ruben.
But we'll have another report, semi-annual report.
Semi-annual.
Right?
Yeah.
Miguel?
Yeah. I
And
think,
then-
I think
and then-
semi-annual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Make
okay
sure
with
the right
semi-annual?
language.
Miguel, we prefer a daily report if that's possible.
Right, we'll accept semi-annual if you're okay with that.
Semi-annual written reports are fine.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I could repeat the
Yes, Joe.
provision again.
Yep, go ahead.
So
Everybody listen.
GWA shall proceed with the projects and programs identified in its water loss study, including implementation of the prescribed DMA program. GWA shall provide the PUC with semi-annual reports using metrics prescribed by the AWWA Water Loss Control Committee, which specifically indicate, number one, real loss reduction, with a comparison of real loss reduction during the previous 12 months. Number 2, real loss as a percentage of water supplied with a comparison of real loss as a percentage of water supplied during the previous 12 months. 3, demand metering areas that are underway and their status. 4, upcoming demand metering areas that are scheduled. 5, any problems, delays, or other issues affecting the programs and proposed solutions for corrections. The first of such report shall be submitted within 60 days of this order. Was there anything else? Doris?
60 days of September.
As of September 30th.
It's for fiscal year 2022. The report should be submitted 60 days after, so by November 30th. Right.
That the first such report shall represent fiscal year 2022 and be submitted to the PUC on November 30th, 2022. Okay? Everybody's good with that? Okay. Number 11, GWA is directed to work with staff under the guidance of an ALJ to resolve issues associated with build volume of failed meters and the potential impact to residential billing data and its use in the forecast of residential water consumption, and to provide a report to the Commission by July 1, 2023. Miguel.
Suggest you strike that ordering provision, Mr. Chairman. The metric that it's being talked about here is not used in our forecast. It was used when we were trying to estimate the volume that was not being captured because of our failed LP meter issue. We've resolved that issue. We replaced all the failed LP meters.
Right.
It's no longer relevant, and I suggest it be stricken.
Okay. Larry, any comments on ordering provision number 11 now?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is an area that was unresolved in the proceeding and has the potential impact to affect the forecast of residential consumption. And if for no reason other than reaching closure on this, when we've had several discussions with GWA on this particular matter, and we have failed to reach closure on this. They failed to be able to show us how these build volumes of failed meter are being handled. And all we're asking for is to be able to resolve what was left undone in the rate case for the purposes of putting this to bed. It could be that what GWA just said is 100% valid, that it's totally taken care of. But after trying to resolve this on at least 3 occasions, it's unresolved. And we would like the opportunity to be able to resolve it. And that's resolve it jointly working with GWA under the guidance of an ALJ in the process to do such. Also, just to take a bite at their previous recommendation, number 10. I understand you want to go to semi-annual. Semi-annual is probably something that's doable, but I will tell you, based on experience, as you move through time with one of these loss reduction mitigation efforts, you're going to be able to track what is going on a quarterly basis. But I'm not going to beat that horse to death. All I'll say is I've been involved in water loss mitigation implementation programs before, And we actually did these reports on a monthly basis. And it's not a big deal once your system is set up. But if the commission wants to go with semi-annual, that's fine. I would say that using the language that GWA has proposed, where it's talking about real losses, and real losses are what's applicable to your pipes in your system, that you will get that information under what they proposed. However, what you won't get is you won't get the impact of back office issues that contribute to water loss as or lost water revenue. So that is an issue that is inside the concept of water losses, but outside of the concept of putting together a real loss, a report based on real losses. So the way to potentially handle that is when we get down later, there may be a place to take into consideration this back office impacts as they affect unaccounted for water. So those are my comments. We can live with the semi-annual and recognize that the reporting of real losses is going to leave unreported the losses that are in the back office, which can be substantial in some cases. So with that, I would say that with regard to item number 11, we would like to continue to see if we can reach closure on this. It's just a matter of data and exchanging data and continuing to have discussions to arrive at such conclusions.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, Miguel.
just to address that, the resolving the issue, it's not relevant anymore. You don't have the meters. Even if it is just a matter of exchanging data, if they want to do it without charging us, I don't want to waste ratepayer money on going back to resolve an outstanding issue for them that is already irrelevant and proceeding moving forward. So I'm going to stick by my position on that. And with regard to the back office losses that he's talking about, those are part of the AWWA standard, which we do every year. So if we don't give it to you quarterly, don't track it quarterly, you're going to get it annually, you're going to see it. We're not trying to hide anything, it's there.
Okay, thanks, Miguel. Joe Fett, in your ordering provisions, what did you have related to this?
I didn't have anything related
You
to
left
that,
it out.
Mr. Chair. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Joe Fett. Pete would like to strike it. How do the other commissioners feel? Strike it? Pedro? Joe? Strike it? Doris? Strike it. Okay. Stricken from, yes, Pedro.
All the meters now are functioning.
We have the good meters now. We don't have the LP meters anymore, the low profile ones. The San Antonio meters, right, Miguel?
That's correct, sir.
And we're seeing good reports out of the meters at this point in time.
No issues,
Yeah. Small failure amount.
just not enough customers for the larger meters.
All right. So it's stricken. Number 12. Pursuant to its responsibilities under 12 GCA 1210-2, the Commission authorizes the undertaking of a focused management audit examining GWA staffing levels and the deployment of best practices in certain areas of GWA operations, including back office support, customer service, delivery and collection system operations and maintenance, and water production and wastewater treatment operations and maintenance. This effort is to be undertaken under the supervision of an ALJ with staff assistance, leading to an initial report to be produced by September 30th, 2023. Miguel, you love this, right?
I have no issues doing a management audit if we are doing the management, or we hire someone to do the management audit. I have a big issue with the management audit on us being done by PUC staff. So I would agree to do the management audit and provide it by a date certain for the PUC to review with their staff, but I don't want to be doing it under the PUC staff.
Okay. Larry, comment?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, my comment is relatively straightforward. The law requires that the commission do this, not GWA. And I don't know what more you can say than what the law says. I would say that this area and the loss area are really, other than the rate, are the two most important areas, because both of them are critical to the regulatory agenda moving forward, because they offer the greatest opportunity for benefits to accrue to consumers. Losses are obvious, and this area should be obvious, because when you look at the staffing study prepared in this rate case, which is required by statute to be considered during this particular rate case, it shows that GWA staffing, in accordance with the provisions in the law, are substantially at variance with the benchmarks that are prescribed in the law. And so just to wrap it up, I would say, hey, the law requires that the commission do it, not that GWA do it. And there's certainly good precedence for wanting to do this, given the fact that you've had about 6 staffing studies provided to you since the law was passed, and all of them continue to show the same trends.
Miguel?
The law requires that the PUC do a staffing study. I don't believe it says that they do a management audit, right? If you want to do a management audit to look at a broader picture and include staffing, that's what I'm referring to. We'd be happy to do that on our own. The staffing studies that staff has done, to my recollection in the proceeding, have been largely inconclusive because of the way the comparisons are drawn in the law to stateside utilities. There isn't, the way we operate our system isn't comparable to any other stateside utilities that I'm aware of. We do participate in the AWWA benchmarking study. We submit our data. We've been doing it consistently. I think probably 4 out of the past 5 years, we've submitted our data. That provides a comparison, and based on those issues, based on those benchmarking surveys, compared to median utilities, which is everybody who responds, yes, in some categories we're outliers, in some categories we're not. So I think the unique characteristics of GWA's system and the way we operate, there aren't very many other utilities that have 120 wells. So there are some things about the way we operate which makes us different and it doesn't comport well to a comparison with stateside utilities. So I believe that the metric probably should be, the comparison metric should probably be different. I don't know if you want to just isolate it to island utilities, but my point is that we're happy to do a management audit with a broad scope and provide you the specifics on the staffing for consultants.
Jofet and Fred, what are our legal requirements regarding this exactly?
So there's a provision in our governing law that in every rate case, before the commission raises rates, there should be a manpower and staffing study. And I believe it's based upon comparables to, used to be 4 other utilities, at least mainland utilities. I think that's still there. But the point is that it's a requirement during the rate case. So theoretically, I mean, there were some in phase 1, I believe there was kind of a preliminary staffing study. And often in some other rate cases, we've sufficed that study with a presentation by Georgetown. But in other words, the staffing study should already have been done. That's what's in the record now. And it does say a staffing and manpower study. I'm not sure the statute, I don't believe the statute refers to management audit. Now, I know with GPA, for example, they've done a number of management audits over the year. We did one for the Solid Waste Authority, but that was because the statute required specifically a management audit. So I don't believe our statute requires a management audit. It does require a staffing and manpower study.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Comments from the commissioners? Joseph, sorry, Pedro, what did you have in your proposal regarding this, Joseph?
I didn't indicate this type of provision.
This one was,
Yeah.
go ahead, Pedro.
Yeah, I think in Guam, we got the Navy running a water system. So maybe just to compare apples to apples, because now we're gonna compare it to the one somewhere else. It's just a preview, just to see whether we got the right, whether they have the right formula, certification of people running the water system. You know, the certificate of level 4, level 3, level 1, that kind of, you know, that's a safety issue, an environmental issue, and I think that's where the management staff or the management of it needs to happen, is to see whether we have certified people running the show. If you certified level 4, level 3, those are very important things to me. So, but we got the Navy here, so I don't know what kind of staffing pattern they got or whatever. I know Anderson, but Navy is a different. Navy also got some web, so kind of like if Navy is providing water to 40,000 people, and we're providing water to 120,000 people, it should be compared. That's it.
That's probably not an ideal comparison because they have Fenner Reservoir, of course, so they don't have 120 wells. Go ahead, Teresa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I do have a copy of the statutes, and ALJ Horeki's recollection of the statute is correct. So pursuant to 12 GCA 12102.2, Section D, the PUC shall annually conduct a study comparing the staffing pattern and manpower levels of the public utilities under their purview to the staffing patterns and manpower levels of at least 4 other utilities in the United States. So the provision that Georgetown is recommending is beyond the statute. And I also want to point out that regardless of whether this is included, it's required by law. So it really shouldn't be something that's part of it. So that's in line with our position to strike it entirely.
And we did one a couple of years ago. Doris?
So my question is, did we follow the law?
We did a staffing study, I think, at the beginning of the 5-year rate case.
And the staffing study includes the certification levels? Just out of curiosity.
I don't think that they included that when they did their staffing study.
I think it was more numbers based.
But the certification levels are regulated by EPA. We've already got someone looking over our shoulder on certification levels.
Doris, I'm going to let Larry speak. He's asking to speak again. Larry, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So let me make a couple of observations here. First, there was a staffing study done in this particular proceeding. It was completed prior to the hearings and is in the record in this particular proceeding. It continues to show the same patterns as the previous staffing studies that have been done. And the points that Miguel has made, you know, about taking into consideration such things such as the unique operations of the GWA system are things that we noted in the staffing study and indicated would require, further analysis and not just a comparison of numbers that is put together from a panel of utilities that are deemed to be comparable for comparative purposes. In order to do a true staffing study, if that is what's desired, and the staffing studies that have been done seem to indicate that a more in-depth staffing study is needed, then this recommendation took into consideration Miguel's comments about the staffing study that was provided in this docket and said the way to do that is by combining a focused management audit of staffing, taking into consideration the practices at GWA and consideration of the infrastructure parameters such as number of wells, et cetera. So this recommendation is crafted based upon your requirements as a regulatory body to conduct the staffing study, and also taking into consideration the comments that Miguel has made about the unique parameters that need to be considered therein. And it is crafted in such a way to also take into consideration that the commission has management audit powers, which it has exercised in the past, and putting together its management audit powers that it has, in addition to the requirement of the legislature to once and for all develop a staffing study that actually provides some usable information to the commission for the purposes of determining whether the staffing levels, which appear based upon the benchmarks that are used to be out of line, are out of line, or whether in fact they are in fact prudent. And so that's the purpose of this particular recommendation, to bring all that together and resolve this kind of once for all, you might say, and create a plan by which to move towards, if the management focused staffing management audit indicates such, to move forward to an employment complement in accordance with the results therefrom.
So how does everybody feel about this?
Well, it's not part of our legal mandate to require what you struck.
Okay. We've done a staffing study.
Staffing is, we do that anyways. The staffing requirement is.
Go ahead, Fred.
What's required is a manpower and staffing study, not expressly a management audit.
This is something we could revisit later.
Now,
That's something that's.
now the commission might have the power to order that. I'd have to look back on the statute some more. But normally, this could also be done during the next rate case. I mean, if there's a 2025 5-year case, then another staffing study would have to be done.
Because it's required by law.
Yes.
So they already do it, so.
Yes, it would have to be
So
done.
why do we need to do it again? So that's why I say just strike it altogether.
Rowena, strike it. Pedro? We'll be doing another one in a couple of years, Pedro. Yeah. Doris? Joe? Yes. 2 years. Prior to the next rate case. The order for what?
Part of it by law, they have to give us a study. Part of the rate case.
Before they can do the rate case, they have to
They
provide a
have to do
study.
it by law. Right, before 2025.
Number 12 is stricken. 13, GWA shall provide the PUC with an update on the status of obtaining the necessary approvals that would allow GWA to employ commercial paper for prospective capital financing. This update should be submitted to the PUC by January 1, 2023. Yes, all parties agree on this. Everybody agreed? We're good? Miguel? Larry, you're good. I know you're good. You wrote it. Okay. 13's good. 14, GWA is to provide semi-annual information to the PUC under the guidance of an ALJ in a format and schedule acceptable regarding all allocations of all grant monies received and scheduled to be received. Miguel, any issues with this?
Not really. I mean, it's already being, get the same information from the clearinghouse, but
Okay. Everybody's good with this? Larry, I'm not going to ask you on this one because you're already good with it. Doris, you good? Have we ever gotten it before, Miguel?
I don't believe specifically in this form, no.
Okay. You have gotten grant monies, of course, before.
We have, and
Yes.
we include the allocation where we intend to spend it in our 5-year CIP, which we
Yeah.
include.
Would you give that to us? Yeah. This is in a more detailed format.
Yes, sir.
Okay? What? Why semi-annual? Semi-annual's okay? We want annual?
Annual's better.
Annual's better. Annual it is. Thank you, Doris.
You guys have enough work to do, though. We want to report you to that.
We can do 7 analytical studies and, I don't know.
Yeah, did a good job on that. Joe Pat.
Mr. Chair, so the first of which would be due December 31st? If it's annual?
You want to do calendar year? Fiscal year? Fiscal year. Oh, we have to have it right now. Okay, fiscal year.
So you changed it. You got the wording.
So it'll be,
Yeah.
so the first one will include fiscal year 2022, due within 60 days.
Right. Okay, Joe Fett, add at the end of the sentence regarding all allocations of all grant monies received and scheduled to be received within 60 days at the end of each fiscal year. Okay? Done. 15, GWA is to provide a report to the Commission on or before January 1st, 2023, detailing the status of EPA proceedings and investigations. And we'll have a consent decree by then, right, Miguel?
Either that or a subpoena, sir.
Okay. You're okay with this one?
No objections.
Good. Everybody's okay with 15?
Yep.
16. GWA, under the guidance of an ALJ, is to collaborate with staff to develop a revised contract review protocol by April 1, 2023. Miguel?
This is one of the outstanding procedural items that we suggest be handled under a separate docket, so I would recommend that it just be stricken from this and included in another docket.
Before I call upon Larry, I'm going to call upon Joe Fett. Any comments, Joe Fett, on this?
I didn't include this provision in
Okay.
my proposed.
Okay. Larry?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is, I couldn't exactly hear what Miguel said, but this is an item that's actually held over from the stipulation. It was not in the stipulation, but was in a side agreement with GWA, stating that this would be done. And all this does is establish not only will it be done, but provides a date by which it will be done.
Rowena?
You can put it in a separate document.
Separate docket?
Yeah.
Everybody's okay? Pedro, good? Joe? Doris? Separate docket. Strike it from this record. 17, another 5-year rate plan beginning in fiscal year 2025 will not be automatically implemented by the Commission. GWA shall file before October 1, 2024, whether it will seek another 5-year rate plan along with the justification. Miguel?
Sir, I don't know why this is necessary. You already have rules and requirements about what needs to be done should we require rate relief. If we continue with a 5-year or go with a 1-year, I mean, the rules already cover it. I think this is totally unnecessary and isn't needed for the order and suggested to be stricken.
Okay. Larry?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the whole concept of these 5-year rate plans, Georgetown was actually working for the commission. In fact, I think this was our idea, if I'm not mistaken. And the concept is at the time, GWA really had no financial capability. And so the concept was to recognize that, and the concept was to bring them along increment by increment to get them into a position where they were a financially viable entity with access to capital markets, et cetera. And the program has succeeded. Now, not only are they financially viable, but they're probably the strongest credit in Guam. And so we're just recognizing that you don't need this cumbersome approach, and that you ought to just rely on rate cases whenever they're needed. They're not needed every year. Whenever the need arises for a rate case, you have one. We don't believe that the rationale that we used in recommending this originally to the commission is any longer viable. We believe that GWA is a strong credit, as demonstrated by their credit rating, and can file for rate cases whenever it needs a rate case, and doesn't need this cumbersome approach associated with this 5-year rate plan that was outlined to create financial viability for them. They're well past that. They're a mature entity.
Number 18, during this rate proceeding, GWA produced evidence that the government would provide funds from the American Rescue Plan in the amount of, there's a typo here, it should be 14.4 million. This order is based on that assumption being implemented. Now that we know it's 12.4, but Miguel comments.
I don't really know what it's for. I don't really know what the ordering provision is for, or what it's requiring. I would just strike it.
Yeah.
When you've been briefed on what the status is, and as soon as PUC acts, I will make sure I let you know when it's been made available to us.
And they'll show up on this report.
Yep.
Doris.
I have a concern about striking it, only because it is, all the scenarios that we saw didn't include some portion.
I agree with that point.
And I think whatever the amount is, but.
It's good to have in the record.
Yeah, and if it doesn't come through,
Right.
then we have it on record that we based it on it coming.
Very good point.
Well, do we want to base the entire order based on whether or not an assumption of what being implemented? This order is based on that assumption.
No,
Yeah.
this was one of the
That's
considerations.
12.4 million.
This was because in every
Actually,
scenario.
the order is based on the 14.4 million.
Yeah.
So if evidence shows to the contrary later on in the future that money is not there, then that changes a lot of things.
Yeah.
So I think we keep it in.
With 14.4 or 12.4?
12.4.
No, 14.4. That's what was originally promised. That's what our staff was going on.
I see.
Yeah, we have to keep it in.
Yeah.
Doris is right. Damn it, I hate to admit it, but Doris is right.
But we know
Sorry,
it's-
Doris.
we know it's
staff has been working with the assumption that this money is available. 14.4. The 12.4 figure has just come out recently to us. So all the work that's been done up till now has been based upon the assumption
But if
that
we
it was
know that it's
14.4.
not there, why is this order based on that assumption?
No, we don't know that it's not there. No one's.
We don't know that
Well,
anything
all-
is there.
Everything has been
We
speculated.
know it's no longer 14.4.
No, we
Right.
don't know that.
Well,
We don't know.
we're not gonna know until it's in GWA's
Okay,
bank
proceed.
account, right, Miguel?
We're not gonna know until the rate case is decided.
Right,
So
right.
the money's in the bank.
I believe you'll see it, and at this point in time, from everything we've heard, it sounds like it'll be 12.4.
Okay.
But for the record, I think we need to put in the 14.4, because Doris said so.
But the government is smart.
So it's just a typo. On the written order here, it says 14.6, so Joe Fett just changed that to 14.4. Okay?
So,
Good.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just for clarification, we're just indicating this particular provision to reflect that the decisions made today are based on this assumption.
Right.
Correct.
But it's not an actual, like, actionable order
No.
by any party.
Well, we're telling Miguel to go run over there and get that money right now. That's what we're telling. No, we're not ordering it. I'm just kidding.
I would recommend, Mr. Chair, then we move this provision closer to the top so that it sounds like more of like a preface.
Yeah, good point.
As opposed to an actual
We'll put it,
enforceable provision.
Okay. That's good.
make it number 2.
No, I thought you wanted it in the second.
Did you want to make it an actual ordering provision?
Well, okay, you want to put it in preface. Doris is right again.
No, that's
You're
what
right.
he said.
Yeah, you're right.
That's what he
And
said.
put it in the preface. Don't make it an ordering provision. Sorry. It's getting late and I'm getting tired.
We haven't decided the meeting.
Yeah.
This is the sound.
So it's stricken from the ordering provisions and the point shall be made in the preface. Okay? Okay. Number 19. GWA indicated in the proceeding that 12.6 million funds in funds from the rate stabilization fund would also be made available through fiscal year 2024. This proposal is accepted, and to monitor compliance, GWA shall provide a report on or before July 1st, 2023 of its proposed use of funds. Miguel?
I don't have a problem with this. The report that I give you is essentially going to look like what I've already given you,
Right.
just based on whatever rates you give me.
Okay. Everybody's good with that? Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. Could
Yeah.
we also make the correction?
Yes.
It's 11.4, not, no one ever said 12.6.
Okay,
in my
another
knowledge.
typo.
What is it?
So it's not 12.6, it's 11.4, correct? Which is now 5.8. Okay, Joe Fett? Sorry, Joe Fett. This is the worst thing we've ever done to an ALJ. Fred, we've done quite a lot to him too over the years, but, okay.
Already, you go to make things.
Number 20. This commission shall continue to keep this docket open in order to conduct all proceedings and implementation of the ordering provisions referenced in this decision. Given that no further rate cases are intended for the next 2 years, the supervision of activities shall revert to an ALJ. Everybody's good with that?
Amen.
Amen? Amen.
21 is.
And 21 is what we always have, so we're good with suggestion of zero.
Yeah. Yes.
But we're the ones that have to deal with it when it comes around the corner in 2024, they can't meet their DSR. And we have to increase it by 13.5%. So better to be proactive now.
What is everybody feeling about this? Pedro, I'm gonna go to you first.
I feel that,
Pedro wants to go with the consultant, zero. 2 years is zero, right, Pedro? Is that what you're saying? No?
years of 2023, and we looked at our bill, our consumption, and all that.
Revisit the second year? Okay.
Zero for 2023.
So Pedro is suggesting zero for the first year and then revisit on the second year, do a true one. Right? Yeah. My feeling is I think GWA needs some relief. I don't know if I'm willing to give them everything that they're asking tonight. Although if the other commissioners go in that position, I may too. But I think they do need some relief. I'm a little concerned about the debt service coverage ratio. I'm concerned about how the rate stabilization fund and the ARP funds have been shrunken down also. And what proceeds after the consent decree with EPA, we don't know that yet. But I think they're going to have a healthy amount of work to do in the near-term future. Yeah, Pedro, go ahead.
Was that the comment concerning the EPA?
The consent decree? Yeah, we don't have that yet. We don't know what that's going to be. So, it's really important we make some decision tonight because they're waiting for the ARP funds for one, and they're waiting to do the consent decree with EPA. So we have to come to some conclusion and decision this evening.
No, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to take just a little bit of a break myself. Everybody, go ahead, Rose.
Yeah, I just wanted to also just point out, in the prospectus, and as I looked through it, since 2016, we gave them a 3.5% increase. In 2017, we gave them a 4% increase. In effective October 1. Then in March 1, 2020, we gave them a 5% increase. And then in October 1, 2020, we gave them a 5% increase. So we haven't been, pardon the expression, niggardly. So the rating, there was that gap between October 1, 2017 and March 20. I don't know what happened because I didn't come onto the board until January 2020 or some October. Anyway, but we have been consistent, and the proposed rate by the ALG and the GWA would be significantly higher than what we've given them in the last 6 years. 3.5, 4, 5, and 5. The range of 4.5 is within the
I'll
range.
just share a little perspective with you. In the years just prior to those years,
It was 16%.
Right. Yeah, we were
15,
giving-
14, 16. So,
yeah, we were
and again,
giving
that's-
them
yeah.
massive increases back then. Because
I
we
remember when I
were
was
starting
there.
from a position of being so low. So, and then we eased up on it in the succeeding years significantly.
And as our consultant said, GWA did receive a very good rating on the last bond.
so, and like any forecast, it's, you know, hopefully things can change, but what Pedro was saying, the water rate, the power rates might be lower and things of that nature, so.
And if that happens, then we can true up.
Yeah, no, well, by giving the 5 and 5, I mean, the 4.5 and the 4, would you necessarily have to true up? But giving more, that's when you, and I cannot ever see us going down, as opposed to going up. Taking away, in other words, taking away the increase. I can't see us.
You're probably correct on that.
I can see going forward, but to take away.
I would point out that there was a case since I've been here where it was actually, when we trued up, it was less.
And we brought the rates down?
Yep.
Well, all I'm saying.
Do you remember that, Fred? I don't recall that. Yeah. May have happened.
It was the second to the last year in the previous 5-year rate plan. It was scheduled for 7, and I think we came in at 3.5%.
Oh, yeah, you offered it.
Right.
Because you're swell guys. Yeah, now I do remember. And that was after we had some pretty big increases again, just prior to that, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
Getting back to the credit rating, and correct me if I'm wrong, part of that rating is due to the fact that you keep your DSC at 1.3, right, or 1.25, I think it is, right?
We were up at 1.5, 1.6, 1.7.
Yeah,
in some cases over 2, and that helps. Also having the reserves helps.
Now we have next to no reserves. And we used to try to maintain a DSCR of about 1.65, but we've come down since then to ease up on ratepayers. But again, I'll share with everybody, and I think Doris and Rowena and others agree with me on this. I'm not comfortable floating down in the 1.3 range. But in the interest of full disclosure, both GWA and our staff agreed to that at the beginning, but we don't have to agree to that. We can make our own decision here in this commission. I'd rather be up in the 1.4 area if we can stay up in that range. And based upon that, I asked Georgetown to take a look at this a little bit for us in case we were seeing that, and that's why what's here on this proposed order was based on some of those assumptions. If we wanted to keep a higher DSCR, we'd want to be up in that 4.5 and 4.5 range. Now, the other thing that's come up is the ARP money is not going to be the same anymore. It's going to be less by about $2 million. GWA is an agency that gross revenues annually are about $100 million. That represents about 1%. So I think a good case could be made was if this is a working baseline here of 4.5, that we should be at least at 5.5 and 5.5. Does that make sense? Doris? So I think that would be a floor that we would work off of, and if you want to look at something in between that and the 8.1 and 6.5 that GWA is recommending, feel free to comment. Well, right. So going back to the ARP funds, Doris, what GWA will be receiving soon for that. Originally, in the numbers that we were looking at, we were assuming 14.4 was going to be the number, but that's changed now to 12.4. So there's a loss of $2 million over the next 2 years, and GWA is a $100 million a year agency in revenues, so it represents about 1% of revenues. So to replace that, we would need to up it another 1% for each year. So we would go from 4.5 to 5.5 as basically a minimum at this stage. That's my opinion.
scenario 3B again. If they go to, excuse me, based on scenario of 3B on 2023, their DSC is going to be at 1.1 in 2024, based on 4.5, 4.5. They're going to come back and ask for a 13.5% increase just to get it back to par. So that's my concern. Is if it's too low now, they're just going to come back and ask for more.
Well, they can always do that. A lot of this, we don't know a lot of these variables yet. Mr. Guerrero brought up the point on power considerations and consumption and numbers related to that. Our staff hasn't had a chance to review all these numbers yet either. So I wouldn't jump on that right now. We have time. We can look at that later.
So are we hovering, is everybody hovering around 5.5 then?
Not necessarily. If anybody here or all of you feel we need a bit of a bigger number, I think that's fine. I think it's up to you. I can't make a motion. I can only offer suggestions.
If we go at 5.5, we're about 2.5% down.
We're 2.5% down.
Off from that.
$2.5 million.
And then we're going to be off by another
1% the following year.
4. 2.4.
$3.5 million.
So if we went 5.5, and that did happen, they can always come back and revisit 2024.
Absolutely.
Right?
We'll be looking at this next year too.
In the interest of saving another 7-hour night.
Yeah, we've had meetings till midnight. We're at 10:08 right now.
Well, Joe, you have all the ordering provisions already, right? So it's just coming down to these two numbers, right? And are we all in agreement other than just the percentages?
Commissioner, if I may, there's one provision that wasn't added to Georgetown's revisions,
Okay.
and it's regarding the DSCR. I don't know if the commission wants to indicate.
Debt service coverage ratio.
I know that in these proceedings, we were sort of talking about 1.3.
Right. Good
Times.
point, Joe.
But none is indicated in the Georgetown's revision, so I don't know if you want to indicate
We
one.
could add it as a provision, but
No, but we need to modify it because we're looking at a different number now. But you should add that. Read the provision as written.
So the provision I had proposed was for its 5-year financial plan, GWA is temporarily authorized to utilize a debt service coverage ratio of no less than 1.3 times.
Okay. Can probably just stay just as that. That's fine. Yep. That's okay with everybody? No less than 1.3.
provision 21.
Rowena.
Mr. Chair, I have issue with us adjusting out the DSCR because we've stayed with 1.4. And I just think we're making precedents, and then we'll go to 1.2, and then we'll go to 0.9.
We can't go to 1.2.
So,
1.25 is the bare minimum.
okay, so I just, I wouldn't support that.
Yeah.
Just have to state it.
Yeah, the parties agreed to it. The order states no less than 1.3. I think we're all in agreement here that we want 1.4. So I think the order is written is fine. We've made our point on this.
Okay, getting back to that.
So add that ordering provision in. Anything else, Joe Fett?
If that provision is in this order, then well, I mean, based on 5.5, based on depending on what our rate increase, we're obviously gonna be outside that number. We'll be below that number if we don't reach up to it.
Not
No,
necessarily.
not necessarily. We'll take a look at it next year again.
That means the projections are certain. And the
Wait.
projections are not.
Yeah, the second year, the projections are not certain.
Yeah, for 2024, I get that.
Don't stress too much about that, right? Miguel?
I would just point out that we're gonna manage to get to the target, and if things change for that first year, what will end up happening is we may end up using more of the reserves for that first year, and then we'll need to increase, we'll come back for the true up in 2024.
Yeah,
It's like
understood.
under everything again.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we kept in the language of ARP funds of 14.4, and then we had the discussion of making the floor 5.5% instead of 4.5, but that discussion is based off 12.4 instead of 14.4. So aren't we contradicting ourselves?
No, I don't think so. They were promised originally 14.4, and yeah, we're thinking that we're going to be getting 12.4 at this point. So if we don't allow for that, then I guess we would just keep it at 4.5 for each year. But I think at this point we're pretty sure it's going to be $2 million less. Yeah. I mean, I guess we're not going to say it again, Joe. Say it one more time.
Yeah. Earlier, we decided to keep in the language of 14.4 ARP funds, and then later on, we had the conversation of moving the 4.5 to 5.5, the floor,
Right.
to make up.
Yep.
And that was considering proceeding.
I see what you're saying
And
now. Okay.
contradicting
That's a good
ourselves.
point.
So we need to change that to 12.2,
4.
12.4, whatever the number.
Okay, I understand what Joe's saying now. It's a good point. So in the preface, Joe Fett, I think we'll change it to 12.4. That's the surest number that we know of right now. I mean, I don't know what else to do.
Well, we're basically 5.5% based on 12.
Right,
So we should change this to 12.
correct.
We'll fix that.
Everybody's good?
I understand.
Got that? Pedro, we're good? Pedro's good. Yeah, he's good. Okay. Yes? Move what?
What percentage?
5.5 and 5.5.
Doris has a motion on the floor, 5.5, 5.5. Is
And
there
on
a
that
second
one-
to the motion?
Wait, 1 second, just for discussion. On the,
Nothing in 22 is.
right, 0 in 2022.
Instead of the way it is now, you just take 4.5, 5.5, and 4.5, 5.5.
Right,
Okay.
0 for 2022 and
Zero.
5.5 and 5.5. The language after on bullet number 2, paragraph 2, the language after that, this increase shall be dependent on GWA achieving milestone step indicated in the prior docket for the commission approval for this rate. We can strike that out because the water loss reports are coming to us anyways.
Yeah,
Yeah, strike that out.
yeah.
Good point, Pete.
So with the motion of 5.5% on 2023 and 5.5% on 2024, I'll second Commissioner Brooks's motion.
Peter seconds the motion. I'm going to go around commissioner to commissioner and ask for your votes. Pedro, you're a yay, right? No, Pedro's a no. Rowena? Yes, Rowena's a yes.
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Pete's a yes. Joe?
Yes.
It's 5-1. The motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chair, do we make a motion to adjourn?
That's a good idea. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second? All in favor? Aye.